So basically, we're going from the 3.2 to the 3.5.
I wish I had a good experience.
Have to go check out town, pick up the she's trying to figure out expenses. She's projecting a lower expense. She could draw. When the other was coming, the other's going to figure out expenses like she's going to put on HR, so that's why it's going to be $300,000 table. Second.
Call the meeting to order, and I'll make a motion to adjourn right away.
Bring this meeting to order. If you would please rise and salute the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Bissett, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Sermonero?
Here.
Mrs. Bissett here. Mrs. Hartzell? Mr. McCullough?
Here.
Mr. Potts?
Here.
Mr. Ross?
Here.
Mr. Shaheen?
Here.
Mr. Podolsky?
Here.
And Mr. Basil?
Here. Under announcements, first and foremost, this meeting is being recorded. Second, we'll have a quick executive session, and the word there is quick, after this meeting regarding personnel. Also, May 23rd, the board meeting is probably going to have to be held in the cafeteria here at the middle school because there's a scheduling conflict with this auditorium. The procedures for public comment are in the agenda on the back side of the blue sheet of paper. We will be following those procedures to the letter tonight. Having said that, if there's any public comment, please step forward and say your name and your address and address the board.
What agenda?
Okay, seeing none. Superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Basil. Just one quick note from me about an important activity to the high school. This Friday is our Daniel Boone Senior High School prom. So I know a lot of people are probably out getting what they need to do to get ready for that as we speak. But tonight we'll be honoring a number of people under our annual Friends of Education Awards and also some Student Service Awards. You can see we have a number of things to hand out to some people. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Trainer. She has a presentation to do regarding each one of the people that we're going to honor tonight. So, Mrs. Trainer.
Thank you. For the benefit of those of you who are in the audience, just a brief overview of what the recognitions are this evening. The Friend of Education Awards are nominations by our staff of individuals who have provided time, financial support, research, materials that would enhance some component of the programs we offer somewhere from kindergarten through 12th grade. And so we have those individuals with us tonight. I will give you an overview of why each of those have been nominated and then ask the recipients to go up to the stage where Dr. Otto has a certificate and Mr. Basil also has a gold apple as a symbol of education for each one of the recipients. So the first individual is Aaron Giles. What up? I'm not sure if all the board has met Aaron, but last August, the district manager from Sodexo was in the district office, and he often wanders back to my office and has something to offer me to support students. He has helped me with the backpack programs, the coats for students, some significant prizes during some of our competitions. And so he told me that because the district was so involved in wellness and health-related curriculum activities, that he had an opportunity for us this year to offer the district 3 days a week the services of one of Sodexo's school nutritionists. And I thought, wow, this is great, because there are just so many things we have been involved in since we have partnered with the Pottstown Wellness Foundation. And Erin was the individual that came to us. And so Erin has been with us since the beginning of school. And I have asked several times to be promised that she'll be back with us again next year. And just to give you an idea of a few of the things that Erin has been a part of since she's been with us, she played a major role in the health fair that we offered for our staff as a presenter. She also co-sponsored a health fair as a pilot project just today for Birdsboro Elementary Center. And we talked this evening, and she shared with me that she is hoping that she can bring that to all of the buildings over the next couple of years. She does classroom presentations, seeing some of the thank you notes from some of the students and talking to the teachers. She's great in the classroom. She provides website information. I think one of the greatest assets that she has become for our parents is that for parents who have students who may have some significant health issues or related to dietary questions, they call Erin and she can walk them through things on the menu, options in the cafeteria that would be good for their particular child, give them some education as far as nutrition with those health issues. She has also offered, and I have in turn communicated to the ministerium, that she would be more than willing to reach out to our community and offer some of her expertise at meetings, and so we're hoping that they take advantage of that next year. And it's frequent that at least once a week you'll see some district-wide news tip go out from Erin that's an educational component for the staff. So we are very fortunate to have Erin with us, and so I thought this would be a fitting tribute for someone who has contributed to staff, students, and the community. So thank you very much.
Very much. I just wanted to say it's been quite a pleasure being part of this district this year. For those of you who I haven't gotten a chance to meet yet, I actually live in Harrisburg, so I commute about 65 miles here every day. And I'll have to say, people ask me, how can you make that trip? It is well worth it to work with the staff. They're so welcoming. And the students, it's just been a complete joy. So thank you for welcoming me to the schools, and I hope to bring more great things to come next year and get more involved with the secondary schools.
Watch the maze.
The second individual is not able to be with us this evening, and she is Mrs. Dorothy Brett. Mrs. Massara and I had the opportunity to get to know her at a Title I conference about 3 years ago. She's a retired reading specialist from the Tobahakan School District. And when President Obama had put out his stimulus money 2 years ago, one of the components of the stimulus money was that we were able to bring consultants to the district that could enhance professional development. And so it was very timely because Dorothy was retiring, looking for a way to stay involved in education. And so we brought her to Daniel Boone to work with any grade level from kindergarten to 6th grade. It was really nice because she wasn't an administrator, and yet she had a wealth of knowledge that was evident very soon after teachers started to work with her. And she would go into classrooms, she would model different techniques for working with students in literacy. She did professional development. She offered staff development for our instructional aides. And she went way above and beyond even bringing tools to the classrooms to work with students in writing. And so we just thought she is finished. In fact, on Sunday they moved to Texas to retire. And so we'll make sure she gets the certificate, but we wanted to thank her for her 2 years here at Daniel Boone School District. And the third individual is sitting to my left, and that's Chief Roth, so ask him to join us. Chief Roth was nominated by the Birdsboro Elementary staff because I hear that 1-800 call Chief Roth, and he shows up all the time. And so just for a variety of different reasons, Mrs. Kiesel explained that the Birdsboro Police as a whole, the chief especially, has been extremely generous with their time, both in positive situations and in situations where they just really need law enforcement for some reason. And she wanted to thank the whole Birdsboro Police Department and especially Chief Roth for giving so much time to the students and to the community of Birdsboro Elementary Center. So thank you very much. The next individual is one that many of you will recognize, and I'm going to ask Mary Kilareski to join me. Mary is retired from the Daniel Boone School District. Her retirement and the closing of Monocacy Kindergarten Center sort of came at the same time. But one of the many talents Mary brought to the Monocacy Kindergarten Center as the head teacher was a wealth of knowledge about early childhood development, and really developed the half-day program when it was there. Mary had much to offer, and yet, for a number of reasons, had wanted to retire. And so we decided to convince her that we could use her skills for some at-risk reading students in the kindergarten classrooms. And so Mary has come back ever since, works with the kindergarten students. In addition to that, she has been sort of the hostess when a number of different school districts have come to see the programs that we offer. She's able to talk to them about the research behind what we're doing, the assessments we use, and so she's really a key player in the whole program of early childhood for the district. In addition, she's the organizer of a number of book packets that we send home to parents. We have put them in pediatric offices. We put them at the food bank. And so Mary develops the packets of their reading books and activity packets that go home hoping that parents will support different literacy activities. So Mary, we really appreciate all those hours. And she'll be around for a long time, I can tell. Thank you very much. The next individual I had the privilege of meeting this year through an assembly at the high school, so I'm going to ask Rexel Cox to join me up front. And I learned about him through an email from our physics teacher, Mr. Helzer, who told me to come up to the high school, and if I hear this huge boom, he's not blowing up the auditorium, it's actually Mr. Cox doing an experiment. So he piqued my interest, and I did see exactly what they were talking about. Mr. Cox is the owner and proprietor of Just Right Automotive Service Center in Bryansville. He's also a very big supporter of alternative energy, and through his independent research has learned a lot about the methods of conserving automotive fuel and reducing vehicle operating costs. Mr. Helzer wrote that as a result, for the past 4 years, Mr. Cox has presented to our junior physics students information on numerous energy alternatives, including biodiesel, hydrogen assist fuel cells, pre-ignition catalytic converters, and Griggs water hummer. Mr. Cox has educated over 1,000 Daniel Boone juniors on energy alternatives. More significantly, Mr. Cox had a significant role in helping to develop Daniel Boone's alternative energy curriculum and an alternative energy research project assigned to the junior academic, honors, and advanced placement classes. As a matter of fact, if anyone is available on May 31st of this year, I believe it starts around 10 o'clock, the presentations of the junior class on this research project will be presented in the auditorium, and I understand there's a number of Pennsylvania representatives and senators that may also be in the audience. So on behalf of certainly the high school science department, I would like to thank Mr. Cox for all the time he has taken to come and to share his knowledge, and also just to give that visual to students of some very in-depth science concepts that they very much enjoy, and I'm sure they learn a lot. Thank you very much. And the last is actually a 2-for-1. So I'm going to ask Melissa Spaulding and Beth Cleniff. Melissa and Beth were nominated by Amity Intermediate Center, and Mrs. Rogers did the narrative for us. And she shared with me that these two women are tireless in their efforts around the school. Both women help in the library every week, as well as help at APC Computer Lab whenever Mrs. Rogers is over there each week. Melissa was president of PTC for several years and is extensively involved in the wrestling program. Beth has also been involved from the start to finish with the middle school musical productions for the past several years. Mrs. Rogers said that she believes these two women deserve to be recognized for all the time and devotion that they have given for many years to the students of the Amity campus. So congratulations. Okay, could I ask the audience to give one more round of applause for all of our recipients? This is also the time each year where we recognize students who invest hours in service either within their school or within their community. And I think I sound like a broken record each year that to me they're amazing how many things students are in addition to the amount of time that they offer to their academic programs. I'm going to ask the sixth graders to come up and join me, and I am looking for Madison Kessler, Jay Carter, and Sarah Thompson. Okay, Madison, which is over here to my right, was nominated by the Atlantis team, and Mrs. Lehman told me that she participates in school band, in cheerleading. She's very helpful to students in need in her team, and she shows compassion on a daily basis. And finally, the consensus of the teachers was that she is absolutely a model sixth grade student. So congratulations, Madison. Jay, on my left, was nominated by Mr. Bloss and his team. He's involved in sports, chorus, TSA, which we just heard was successful a couple weeks ago. He's one of the most responsible sixth grade students. He is nice to all students in the class, and he is one of the students that teachers on the team believe will lend a hand to those around him, both students and staff, and he is also one of the hardest working students in 6th grade. So congratulations. Behind me, Sarah was nominated by Mrs. Boyle and her team. Sarah is an excellent student. She is continually on the honor roll. She's received distinguished honors each quarter. She is involved in the middle school music program. She participates in the school play, and she's always ready to help her fellow students on the team. So congratulations to all of you. And the 7th grade recipients, Julianne Warner, Lindsay McGregor, and Caitlin Shellhammer. Okay, in the middle, Julianne Warner. She was nominated by Mrs. McGrody. She is nominated for her outstanding participation in band, jazz band, the saxophone ensemble. She's in field hockey and is the JV captain. She is a participant in the recycling project, member of student council, member of the track team. She enjoys ski racing. She's in her youth group. She's in her church choir. She babysits, and she also works in her dad's business. Lindsay McGregor was nominated by Mrs. Rexroad and the Fanatics. Lindsay is one of the most well-rounded students she has ever had. Not only is she involved in hockey, band, chorus, the school musical, Girl Scouts, and a number of more prestigious musical groups, she is so friendly and helpful. She takes new students under her wing and assists them with their classes. She is a member of classroom leadership and is an outstanding role model, and she is most deserving of this award. Congratulations. And finally, Caitlin Shellhammer. Caitlin is a quiet leader, and she is always there to help others without being asked. Mr. Hoffman wrote that she leads by example and is truly the embodiment of the characteristics that this award describes. Caitlin is pleasant, gentle, kind, and often goes without recognition for her endeavors to help others and her community. Outside of school, she's involved in Girl Scouts, and she also volunteers at Shady Hollow, which is a writing center which offers programs for students with disabilities. So congratulations. We have two nominations from the 8th grade team, and I would ask Zachary Rarig and Ashlyn Danner to join me. Ashlyn's a returnee. She was recognized previously for her work also with the wellness programs when we did programs for the elementary students with Liftoff, and she was one of the MCs. So she's back for a second. Ashlyn was nominated by Mr. Liederman, and he tells me that at school she is a member of student council, she is a class officer, a member of the band, chorus, and select chorus. She was in the middle school musical this year. She writes for the Boone Tribune. She participates in the Announcers Club, and she is a math tutor for 6th grade. As a community member, she volunteers at the Birdsboro Library and participates in the Teen Advisory Program. She is also a member of the group World Changers and will be traveling to New York this summer to help low-income houses. And Zachary was nominated by the Warriors team, Mrs. Rodenbush. And Mrs. Rodenbush tells us that Zachary is involved in numerous school activities in diverse categories, including Junior National Honor Society, plays, student council, the Boone Tribune, cross-country, track, leadership program, songfest, and chorus. Additionally, Zach goes out of his way on a regular basis to help his peers and the faculty. Congratulations. We have one recipient in 9th grade. I'd ask Xavier Smith to come up. Mrs. Nefok nominated Xavier and tells us that Xavier has done a great deal of work for the freshman class. He is vice president of the class. He is always willing to take on responsibility that nobody else wants to do and always follows through. He single-handedly organized the Class of 2014 Laser Quest fundraiser. He designed the Class of 2014 t-shirt. He is a member of the basketball and football team. He assists his father with the Daniel Boone Youth Sports programs, and he likes to be involved in community volunteers program. He is an excellent student and very deserving of this recognition. Congratulations. In 10th grade, we have one nomination, and it's from Jessica. It is Jessica Swanson. And Jessica was nominated by Mr. Moulon, and Mr. Moulon writes that Jess is currently a member of 6 clubs. She is the historian for FBLA and is also a class officer. Even with her extended involvement, she is still the hardest working member of FBLA. She constantly volunteers her time, efforts, and talents. Her upbeat outlook also provides energy and drive for all the members of the club. Congratulations. In 11th grade, we have one nomination from Amber Spade. And Amber was nominated by Mrs. Cornish, the high school art teacher, for all her great help in preparing sets for the spring musical. She has consistently volunteered her time, energy, and talents after school on a weekly basis. Her kindness and her efforts were greatly appreciated with all the work that had to be done for the musical. Congratulations. One is Cheyenne Casabon, and the other is Mary Flynn. Yes, Cheyenne. Cheyenne was involved in another activity that actually was district-wide. And those of you on the board who were part of the mid-strategic plan review process may remember her as one of the 2 student representatives that helped the steering committee review the strategic plan, and we always have 2 prominent student representatives, and she was nominated to be part of that also and was an active participant, so we were most appreciative of that. She was nominated by Mrs. Parker, and Mrs. Parker tells us that Cheyenne has served as Key Club Lieutenant Governor of District 19 for 2 years. She's an incredible person. She has accomplishments that come with lots of work and effort and very little recognition. She's a role model of leadership, dedication, and commitment to serving others. She has sparked a desire for her peers to increase service in the Key Club and also members throughout her district. She's most recognizable by her efforts at every meeting, and she is most deserving of this award. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you to all the recipients for contributing your time and your efforts to the school district. It really does make a difference. We'll take a quick 30-second break if there are folks here who would like to get up and leave before we proceed with the next half of the meeting. Okay, moving on to curriculum and instruction. Dr. Otto.
Thank you. We'll move on with the rest of our agenda. Board members, you received a revision based on information that came out of the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, revisions that were necessitated by our decision to move forward with the change in in some music courses. So you have in front of you the revision, 2 descriptions that have been changed. Just to summarize for the public in case they don't have them, our marching band, symphonic band has now simply been changed to the word symphonic band, and the marching band and wind ensemble has now been changed to the wind ensemble, and the marching band color guard was taken out of the course selection guide. This was the wording that we had talked about and discussed that removed the requirement to participate you have to be in the marching band to participate in these activities, so that has been removed. Questions? Mr. McElmoyle is here. I believe Mr. McAdam was here. In case there are any questions. He's in the back. Comments? Questions? Okay. On with the next item.
One quick question.
Yes.
Students who are new to the school district audition, is there a special audition for them?
I can't answer that. I would ask Mr. McAdam to answer that.
Mr. McAdams, how does a new student to the district participate? Because this says new students have to audition the prior spring.
Just like if any student moved in, when they sign up for the courses with the guidance department, then the guidance department would contact me, and then I'd set up an audition with them individually. So.
Okay. Thanks. Yep. Any other questions?
All right, moving on. Item B is the report on the Keystone exams. That another one of our mandates from the Department of Education. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Trainer for a short report on what happened with our first administration.
As you might remember from the fall time period, we received information from the Department of Ed that students, starting with the class of 2017, would be required to take certain Keystone exams as part of their graduation requirement. And the first group of students that it would affect would be the current 8th graders. And so this spring, as though PSSAs that seemed to last forever weren't enough, then we embarked on field tests, or actually piloting. The field tests were done before. Algebra 1, both in the middle school for the cohort group that takes Algebra 1, Algebra 1 at the high school, biology, and literature, which was a 10th grade test. And the intention of also having our high school students involved was to be able to take a look at those results in terms of the curriculum that we currently have, so that we would have some parameters to start to either enhance it, revise it, or feel more confident that it is exactly what the students would have to know in order to pass the test. So they were administered to our students May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. They will leave tomorrow morning for scoring, and we are hoping, if the state is on target, that sometime in the early fall we will get our results back this year, and this will become the baseline year. We have already been told that their money is not currently in the governor's budget for next year, and so that these tests will be put on hold until the 2012-13 school year. And so we'll see. So I will let you know more when we get our results back in the fall.
Questions?
That's it. Any public comment on that agenda item, curriculum and instruction?
Shane Cockle, 830 Geigertown Road. I have a question on the marching band. With our activities fees of $150, why will that not cover everything that is due to participate in the marching band?
Well, the fees that this board has yet to vote on, but the activity fee that's being proposed only covers a small portion of the extracurricular expense in the school district. It doesn't cover the entirety of any one particular sport or marching band.
Okay, but isn't that discriminating? If we'll just use the football team as an example. If you fund 100% of the football team for buses, dry cleaning, any kind of equipment, free lunches. I just found out that we were paying for lunches $10,000. Why for $150 you cover absolutely everything for the football team, but marching band will have to put out $150 and more money and more money?
The $150 for football, for an athlete that wants to play football, the fee that they pay does not cover the expense for the entire football program.
Right, but there's extra stuff that we have to pay for in marching band that football gets with no extra charge.
My understanding is there's extra things that parents pay for all different types of activities that the students participate in. Soccer cleats, baseball gloves, it depends on the sport, field hockey sticks, whatever it may be. These fees aren't there to pay for those extra items. These fees are there to subsidize the extracurricular and athletic programs that we have. Otherwise, this board will be faced with making decisions about eliminating those very same programs.
don't you think it would be fair if you fund transportation for one thing, you would fund transportation for something else? If you fund dry cleaning for a sport, you would fund dry cleaning for marching band. I think it's kind of discriminating against the music program, where if you participate in a sport, you're kind of grandfathered in and everything's taken care of. Yeah, everyone has to buy cleats. I have to buy sneakers for my kids. I'm talking about the expenses that the school district picks up for the sports that they will not and refuse to pick up for the band.
Well, I'm not sure what expenses you're referring to that aren't being picked up by the band. The school district does provide a wealth of money to support the band program and the music program here at this school district.
Well, it's transportation. Will you, is the school district going to say tonight that they'll fund all transportation for the marching band like they fund for the basketball team when they go on the championships and you have to drive them 15 extra games after the season, and the football team? Are you going to fund 100% of the buses?
We're funding whatever's been presented in the budget to us by the administration for the music department. There haven't been any cuts other than the Winter Guard and Color Guard for the music department.
And why did we cut those two programs?
Because we asked all departments and all buildings and all extracurriculars to contribute something in terms of making cuts so that we could balance this budget. The athletic department cut about 25% of the budget, $185,000. The Winter Guard and Color Guard, I believe the cost associated with those two sports was about $9,000, almost $10,000 that was cut from that particular budget. So every department, every building, every program was asked to go back to their budgets and make cuts. Those are the cuts that were made. Before you get going, Shane, we're past the 3 minutes.
Okay, I have one more quick question.
Yeah.
Was the board aware that Tom McGath was budgeting $10,000 for lunches on the sports program?
I can't speak to that, and Mr. McGath isn't here. If it was part of the budget, then it was part of the budget.
I think the board should look at the sports budget. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Louis Lasik, 8 Miller Drive, Douglasville, PA. I just had a quick question because we were slightly confused. Is it official that you have cut both percussion and color guard indoor programs?
Nothing has been officially voted on as of yet.
Okay, because that's what it sounded like when you just said that.
Those two programs were offered up for budget cuts as part of the discussion this board has had over the last 3 months.
Okay, who offered those up?
Mr. McAdams, I believe, offered those up.
All right, I was just checking. Because of what you said when Mr. Cockle was speaking, it sounded but good.
Any other public comment?
Jessica Geyer, 40 Winding Creek Drive, Douglasville. All right. Good evening to you all. As you can probably tell by the jacket and shirt that I'm wearing, I am here to represent the Daniel Boone Indoor Percussion Ensemble. The program that I and many of my friends love so much is in jeopardy of being cut, and you have the power to stop that from happening. This ensemble isn't just another thing that lazy teenagers waste their time on. It's a lot more than that. It's a place where we can go to have fun, be productive, make friends, and be successful. I came into this organization not knowing what to expect, but what I found was a group of friends who I can trust, an excellent staff who cares about me and the organization, and an activity which has taught me how to be a competitive team player and how to manage my time. I think I speak for all members of the Drumline when I say that my grades are by far their best when I'm participating in it. We need to keep them up and manage our time well in order to be allowed to participate, and so this is exactly what we do. Drumline is the reason that most of us look forward to the winter season. It's why we don't go insane during that long stretch of school without breaks. It's the one thing that we actually want to participate in because we enjoy it. Not because colleges think it looks good, not because it helps us have a life, and definitely not because of its schedule. Sure, it's an extracurricular, so colleges like it, but participation in drumline keeps us from going out on Saturday nights, and it's the most time-consuming thing I'm sure any of us have ever done. But we wouldn't give it up for anything. Back in October, I had a bad case of mono, and I missed 2 consecutive weeks of school. The first day back to school was the last day of the first quarter, so I was really behind on my schoolwork. When auditions for drumline came around, my parents told me that I wasn't allowed to go to the rehearsals because I had too much schoolwork to do. I was horrified that my membership in drumline might be jeopardized because of my unfortunate illness and resulting piles of schoolwork. But the staff worked with me and my parents, and I managed to make it as a member of the ensemble. I put more effort into my schoolwork then than I think I ever have. I honestly don't know a staff so concerned with academics that they would allow a student to be in the organization if she missed auditions. Being a member of the drumline has helped me learn how to work for something I want and how to be successful at what I do. As I'm finishing up my junior year of high school, I've developed what you could call early onset senioritis. However, I couldn't let that get in the way of drumline. So even though I wanted to be lazy, I continued to work hard throughout the end of the season. Drumline isn't just some other activity. It's one of the most successful activities in the school. I'm not talking about placement either. I mean, we have a streak of 100% of our members continuing on to higher levels of education. Some of the top students in the school participate in drumline, and we also have the respect of music organizations in surrounding school districts. If drumline's cut, it won't be just another club. It will be cutting the reason that most of its members care about school. It will be cutting the thing that keeps members from getting in trouble. But most importantly of all, it will be cutting one of the school district's most successful organizations. So, before you make the decision to vote on the cutting the program that so many of us love, please reconsider and understand its unfortunate repercussions are much larger than what you originally assumed.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hello, I'm Melanie Solomon. I'm a high school sophomore. I live in 106 Slateman Road. With all due respect, I honestly don't believe that the board here seems to understand that we are a music department. Each program comes together and we work as a whole, and we form one amazing, extremely successful program. The marching band can't work, it can't function without the indoor guard and the indoor percussion systems. If you think about it, sure, a human body can live without an arm. You know, there's prosthetic arms, you can live with a nub, but can it live without arms and legs? That's essentially what you're doing. You're taking away the marching band's arms and legs. When you lose your arms and legs, you lose your desire to live. The program, the music program here, is losing its desire to even participate. Without indoor guard and indoor percussion, we don't have the technique to succeed as we have. For the past couple years, we took first and second place. We've been taking first for a long time, and that's not going to happen anymore. We're already diminishing in size because people don't want to participate in a program that doesn't have its heights, like indoor percussion and indoor guard. We're losing all technique and people. You're taking away the desire to be in the program by cutting the indoor programs. And you're destroying the program. And I honestly don't think anybody here understands what's going to happen if you take away indoor guard and indoor percussion. We can't function without them. And I would just like you to reconsider and think of what's going to happen to the marching band if you take away these indoor programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Leilani Pofnock, 1010 Cocalico Road, Birdsboro. At the board meeting on April 18th, and as reported in the Pottstown Mercury the following day, it was stated that the proposed cuts to the high school indoor program were recommended by the band director. These reductions were recommended only in response to the administration of this school district asking for that reduction in an effort to match the 25% reduction in the athletic department budget. Based on discussions over the past month, 25% of the high school's $720,000 athletic department budget is equal to about $180,000 reduction. 25% of the current high school's music department's $40,000 budget is equating to about $10,000. And if I'm correct, that is lunch for the football team. And a side note, that is not in my prepared statement. I love football. I have family members on the football team. I cheer them on whether my daughter is participating in the band or not. If we are trying to keep things equal across the board, can anyone tell me how these numbers are equal, fair, or even reasonable? I am challenging this board to exhaust every financial resource available to fund the indoor percussion and color guard ensembles. At this point in time, students who participate in these activities are the only ones who are at risk for losing an opportunity to compete. If any other team, sport, or club had as much success over the last few years as these ensembles have, I believe it would never be considered to be cut by this board or administration. Whether the board wants to acknowledge it or not, the Daniel Boone Music Program is one of the most revered and respected music programs on the East Coast Scholastic Circuit. The organization has consistently been recognized as a leader in both the outdoor marching band and indoor percussion ensembles. The school board has made these kids feel that their talents and abilities have become irrelevant. Let's not allow our egos and pride to get in the way of student success. Let all students of the Daniel Boone School District have equal opportunities instead of discriminating against one particular department or group of kids. Thank you.
Stock 32 Serenity Drive. I'm a member of the Indoor Color Guard, and I'm a freshman, and before high school I had no clue what indoor was. I was a saxophone player, I had no clue how to spin a flag, and one day I picked up a pole, and I realized this is something I could do with my future. I really grew on loving Indoor Guard. I worked as hard as I could. I tried to keep my grades up, and I realized that without it, my grades would have dropped so low that I would probably be repeating this year. Color Guard has taught me how to be a completely different person. Now I'm thinking about doing a season of outdoor, and I just want people to realize how much respect I have for the organization, and that if I cut it, if you guys cut it rather, it's definitely taking away part of something that I've grown to love. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Teresa Walter. I live at 100 Highland Court in Douglasville. I'm here tonight to speak in support of our Indoor Color Guard. Color Guard is an extremely successful group at the Daniel Boone High School. Color Guard took first place at our local Pennsylvania competition. That means here in eastern Pennsylvania, our Color Guard is number one. They are the best. They went to East Coast competition. They took fourth place on the East Coast. These achievements speak volumes toward the effort and commitment demonstrated by this group, and I implore you not to cut our Indoor Color Guard, to please keep this activity active in our high school. Both the Color Guard, indoor percussion, as well as other extracurricular activities provide students with necessary skills that go beyond classroom instruction. 3 things that colleges are looking for which students demonstrate by their participation in extracurricular activities, are number one, the student has made a meaningful contribution to something. Number two, the student can maintain a long-term commitment. And number three, the student can manage their time and their priorities. For my daughter, Color Guard has successfully provided all of these attributes. I think I can say the same for the other girls who have committed their time and energy to the Color Guard, as well as all the students who participate in the indoor percussion group. Color Guard and percussion have achieved great success. The members of these groups are college-bound. They are intending to use their experience to demonstrate their time management skills, their long-term commitment ability, and their ability to make a contribution to a group when they are applying for both scholarships and college admission. Please don't take this opportunity from them. In conclusion, I urge you, don't cut our indoor groups. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Lamont, Rosewood Court, Douglasville. I have a question for the board as far as fees and clubs. Over the last several months, there have been many discussions about extracurricular fees, activities, which ones it would impact, which clubs it would impact. And at this point, I believe there's an awful lot of confusion amongst the public as far as which programs are or are not going to be continued next year. Can a list be presented to the public as far as which programs the district does plan to offer next year?
If you don't mind, if I could interrupt real quick, we're going to address this under number 11 policy.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the extracurricular, co-curricular activity policy.
Okay, and that'll include fees and it will include which programs? Mm-hmm. And if not, I'll just come back up and ask.
Absolutely. There's an opportunity to speak at that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment on the curriculum and instruction portion of the agenda? Okay.
May I have before we leave this issue, just for the benefit of the public and for the board, there was a comment made by a number of people about $10,000 in meal money. When we originally asked the athletic department to take a 25% cut, for those of you that have been coming to these meetings regularly way back when, it seems ages ago, there was the threat at that time that the middle school sports program, if at the end of the day we could approve that budget, that program would have disappeared. Mr. Legath went back to the drawing board and offered a plan B to be able to save middle school sports. And part of that plan has been that the $10,000 that people are referring to, we are not buying lunch for the football team. We are, however, we had the practice prior to, if this budget goes final, that we used to do $10,000 of postseason meal money for all sports. That has been cut in this proposal. I just need to be very clear on that with everybody listening. And if the board approves the budget in June, as it's written now, that $10,000 will be gone.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Moving on to buildings and grounds. Update on facility committee.
Turn it over to Mr. Potts. There was a facilities committee meeting last Monday, and there are a number of discussion items to come forward. From that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Potts.
Thank you, Dr. Otto. Yes, last Monday evening, we had discussed that the turnstiles are in and installed at the high school along with the card system. We now need to set a policy for the card system for that. That's policy 707G2. Correct. Fees based on that are $20. Anyone with a lost card, that's replacement, is also a $20 fee. Also, all the rules will be posted and enforced for conditions on that track.
May I just interrupt? Just to clarify what Mr. Potts is referring to, for those of you that have a chance to get to the stadium, back when the stadium was built, we promised that we would give public access to the building. We are on the verge of doing that at a fee, which he is explaining. So if you go up to the facility and you see this new gate up there, that is what he's referring to. A fantastic job done by our staff and the program that the policy is here. and the work done by our crew was second to none. It looks like it came as an original with the stadium. So I'd like to thank them for that. Just so you know that once we pass this policy, that will open the stadium up to public use for the things that we have designated for it to be used for.
And obviously those cards will be dispensed either at the athletic office or the main office with an application fee. Also, Mr. Smith noted that the modular restroom facilities are completed. We are working with the footers. Hopefully by the end of the month, they're working with SDE, which is under a review right now. Once we get approval, he will start on those footers and then move the building in. Basically, that's also the batting cages were installed at the high school, and they're obviously being used quite usefully. And that's all I have on that.
Any questions from board members?
Just also, as we obviously are approaching the graduation season, I wanted to just remind everybody and the press here that we are bringing our graduation ceremony also back to our new facility, and we'll be sharing more about that as we get closer to that. But that is on June 10th.
Okay. Any other comments from board members? Seeing none. Any comments from the public on buildings and grounds?
Louis Lasik, 8 Miller Drive, Douglasville. What you just mentioned, perhaps I should wait until we get closer, like you said, but I had a question the other day about graduation regarding the seating. To my understanding, you were only talking about having at least the home side stadium seats used for family of students graduating, and it was unsure. We were unsure whether or not we were also using the away side. I would like to know that. And also, I was told people were not allowed to sit on the embankments surrounding the stadium, and I was wondering if we could maybe allow that to have more people attend graduation, because I know one of the earlier numbers was a 4-person limit per student, and I know in my immediate family alone living in my household, I have more than 4 people. And if each student adhered to that, we would have no room for even any students, like underclassmen, who also would like to attend.
Mr. McEnroe has heard your questions. Since he's in the building every day, I'm sure he can provide you and the student body with some answers to your questions. Right. But they're all good ones. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question. We called for baseball fields to maybe get practicing for the teams, middle school.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Earl Cockle. And
can you give your street address?
268 Colorado Drive, Birdville.
Okay.
We call for on Sundays, and Tom McGath told us that the fields are booked every day from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock in the evening, every day for the rest of the year. So like September to August, whatever. And on Saturdays and Sundays it's booked from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock in the evening. Now I know my kids play for Berkshire Red Sox, and they played on those fields. There was 80 or 90 teams at $900 a piece that those teams made. At the end of the day, they're running around on our carts. Who's paying for the gas? Who's paying for the carts? Who's maintaining the fields? When in a year, when they rake the fields and that dirt goes out in the air and done, we get to put more dirt on the fields. Who pays for that? Who gives Tom, or I guess it was Tom McGath, Tucci, a year of baseball for 5 fields in the middle school where these kids will never get to play? If I take my kids there, we're not allowed to play because he has something from September to August. They're booked every day from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. Now, you and I both know who's going to play every day from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night, Saturdays and Sundays.
Mr. McGaff isn't here to address your question. What I can tell you is we do have a policy in place that allows for the school district to charge non-community groups or groups that are for-profit a fee for using our facilities to cover the costs that are incurred by their use. I forget which policy number that is.
He said it was free.
Huh?
They said it was free anytime you wanted to use the field. This is what they said.
It depends. I can't speak for what Mr. Legaff's told you. I mean, I know we have a policy that we were working on that we put out there that basically put a fee schedule in place for those organizations that are for-profit that are using our fields. Local community organizations are charged. I can't even remember. I don't think they're charged anything at all.
808 policy. I know last year, Buildings and Grounds, the committee, we looked at this.
Yeah.
Because we had lengthy discussion because sometimes they were using it for tournaments and if there was a fee and if they were making a profit. And if I remember correctly, we don't charge them a fee because they're not making a profit on it, but they in turn supply the infield mix, which I guess is very expensive. The district doesn't pay for that. They pay for it. And I think they were paying for porta potties and they were paying up for other things in kind in exchange for the fee. And when Mr. Legaff did the analysis, he figured we were actually making off better.
Excuse me. There was we went, my son played 115 games of baseball, 50 with Berkshire. Mainly, most of them were at the middle school property. There was never any porta potties there. We used the facilities there. And
we're talking about in general. I mean, you're talking about very specific baseball.
Now I'm talking about middle school baseball.
Okay.
On the field.
We don't own the fields.
Yeah,
Amity Community Park.
Amity owns
we only book them.
the fields, right? So we have a relationship with the Amity Township.
So on so I want to know who's getting the money for our fields in middle school. If we're paying the taxes, who's getting? I mean, we figured it out. We made $50-some thousand in one tournament.
They're not our fields.
The middle school fields are not our fields.
No. We have a licensing agreement for the Amity Township Community Park fields. And there's a licensing agreement that we schedule them and have first use of them, but they are the community fields.
So why does Tom Legaff get the...
They schedule
Because we schedule them for
Even
the
in the
township.
summer.
That's part of our agreement, the schedule.
It's part of the licensing agreement in exchange for us having first use of them. It was a partnership when we built the middle school. We wouldn't have to develop playing fields.
Because I don't know who would have first right unless you have an organization, a non-profit organization for baseball. I wouldn't know who in the township's going to have first right. I mean, our first right's done. It's done. It's taken care of.
I don't know what to tell you in terms of that. I mean, obviously, you heard what the board has. We schedule the fields. That's what we do. We use the fields, and the township owns the fields. So, I mean, if you have an issue with Mr. Legaff in terms of, who gets the schedule, I don't know if that comes on a first-come, first-served basis throughout the summer months, or what. I don't believe it does. So
if I put in next year for 5 years, I can have the field.
I don't. You'd have to take that up with Mr. Legaff.
And then I can rent them out to whoever I want. I mean, I'm just trying to ask if that's a legitimate. If I can go to Legaff and say, Tom, you're my best friend. I want the team.
I don't have a policy here in front of me, so it's very difficult for me to answer your very specific question on that. I think you need to really.
Buildings and Grounds can look at that again,
I mean,
because I know you looked at it before.
Yeah, Facilities Committee can certainly take a look at the question you have, and we can review that policy and attend one of the Facility Committee meetings, and you'll get some more information from that.
Because I can make a heck of a lot of money doing that. Beginning good with the AD. I mean, rent it for 5. Just say I want it for 5 years.
I don't look. We're covering.
That's fine.
Okay,
So we'll have to come back with some answers, obviously.
And I would suggest you come to the Facilities Committee meetings. Okay.
When is the next facilities meeting?
First Monday of the month.
First Monday of June.
First Monday of June?
7 o'clock at the Matthew Brook Building. Okay. Any other questions on Buildings and Grounds? Seeing none, we go on to Finance.
Okay, we have a number of items to go over with the board. Course and credit approvals we'll approve for our voting meeting. We have a real estate exoneration from the Keystone Opportunity Zone, which is attachment 1. The annual PSBA fee is there. That's an annual approval. Attachment 2. The item D is for our coverage for interscholastic sports insurance coverages, with the cost there for you, policy coverage same as past years. We also enter into offering voluntary student accident coverage. We've been doing this for decades in education. Parents may purchase this. You see the rate there. That's nothing to do with board or district finances. This next item is similar in terms of approval for a 3-year contract with Herff Jones Yearbooks for yearbooks at Daniel Boone Area High School, with the costs listed there appropriately. And again, this is not a cost item to the district. Item G is our annual county intermediate unit joint purchasing for the following supplies: art supplies, custodial supplies, as written there, medical supplies, etc. Number of attachments to help you with that. Item H is the approval of the settlement of the real estate tax settlement appeal for the 5 properties dealing with the Arrowhead Golf Course. This comes with a recommendation from our district solicitor. We are also asking for approval and renewal of the proposal and food service contract for Sodexo with a guarantee return as listed there of a little over $122,000. This is year 1 of a 4-year renewal. So before we go to the discussion of the budget, any questions on those items?
Dr. Otto, for the Sodexo contract, what is the current guarantee that you have in the existing contract?
Ask Danielle to give us that piece of information.
There you go.
I'm not 100% sure without looking that up for you. I can get it. I want to say it's around $150,000. The decrease is due to going to half-day kindergarten and no longer having kindergarten meals.
My only comment on this is number C. I kind of bring this up. I brought this up last year. I'll bring it up again this year. Obviously, I've taken some PSBA courses and attended some of their things, and obviously we get the newsletter from them, which is helpful. I'm just wondering whether all that information is helpful to the tune of $11,000 to the school district, or whether we ought to be cutting that out for 1 year. We do have memberships in other organizations, be it the superintendent or the business manager, where we seem to get the same kind of information. And if we do need to take classes and stuff like that, they do have non-member rates. But I don't think they would exceed the $10,000, $11,000 that we're spending here. Every single board member participated in every single class that they offered.
Did we talk about there being insurance or
I
something
thought there
else
was
that
insurance
they're
coverage
offering in
that
addition
we
to
were
just
bonding for us.
bonding for us?
Okay.
Can somebody talk more about that? I mean, that's what I remember. I don't know the details, but I do.
When you get more
Quite frankly, as a board member, I'd certainly sooner see money go to our students for things such as the program we talked about earlier, the indoor guard program and so forth, than heavy to this organization.
Find out what membership covers.
Right.
Because there is some stuff that does cover us, bond us, I believe, and also insurance provide for us.
No, last year at this time they gave a PSBA actually sent us a flyer telling us everything
What the
that
benefits
they
were.
offered us and why
So
we
before,
did.
Dr. Al, can you
Yeah,
find out?
hopefully we're taking advantage of that stuff and there's a savings there. But if it isn't, and we can get it some other
Oh, I
way.
agree with that, but find out what it does cover. It's more than just a weekly newsletter.
I know one of the important features connected to PSBA is the assistance that they give us with policy development.
I know policy development and the legislative report, the weekly newsletter is very
Trying to say whether it's worth $11,000 or not, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say how you measure that. That's the fee they charge.
What would the cost be to use an attorney? That would be the equivalent.
Exactly.
Well, a lot of our policies, I mean, policies are public. I mean, we can pull other school districts' policies down and pattern ourselves after those because they've already gone through their process. And quite frankly, that email once a week from the legislative report, you don't necessarily always read it on a weekly basis. So, I mean, again, I'm not sure, as you said, Mr. Bader, that stuff's all worth $11,000.
Yeah, well, let's look into what the benefits are and whether we're taking advantage of them.
I'd be curious to see if we partake in any of the insurance coverages.
We'll
We
get back to the
discounts.
board by the end of the week.
Thank you. Let me just see here. I didn't have any other questions on items A through I. Did any other board members have any issues? Questions on items A through I? Seeing none, okay, well, let's just move on to the budget. Dr. Otto, since last Thursday night, the budget workshop, obviously you guys have had just a couple of days to take a look at some of the items that the board had asked you to revisit. What did you guys come up with over the weekend?
Okay, before we go to that, I think it would be helpful for the public here that may not have had the opportunity. Mrs. Penz, if you could just review where we stood after last Thursday with a general review of the worksheet we've been using.
Currently, proposed expenditures are at $49,621,787. $49,621,787. That includes additions that we talked about on Thursday night, which were the reduction of 2 secretaries at the middle school, high school. We did go back, as the board had suggested, and found some additional savings, even in addition to what we had presented Thursday night in legal fees, reduction in elementary building supply budgets, high school and middle school supply budgets, along with the resignation and replacement of 1 full-time equivalent with a 0.5 full-time equivalent. On the revenue side, our revenue is currently at $48,285,961. What we added there was the placeholder of going to increase the millage to the Act 1 index, as well as putting in the revenue to offset the self-funding of the elementary yearbooks. And then we also had a placeholder of use of fund balance of $650,000, which all that now has a total budget deficit of $685,827.
We have come up with an addition tonight. I'm prepared to present to you a proposal, at least, for another $472,000 in further reductions. First of those being, you've heard talk about the athletic director's position. We're all aware that Mr. McGath is leaving. We've come up with what we believe is a creative solution by taking that job and reworking it to the level of something we would call an athletic facilitator. We can work out the details. We believe we have the details of that worked out. Just to give an idea that this person would basically take over a lot of the managerial aspects of the athletic department, a lot of the things that Mr. McGath did on a daily basis regularly. And then we would turn over a lot of the work with coaches and evaluations back to the building administration at both the middle and high school level. That savings would net us about $54,000 of that $472 that I just quoted you. The second item, we asked Mrs. Trainer to go back to the drawing board regarding further reductions in the aid staff. Mrs. Trainer is prepared to present to you tonight a new plan that reduces aides another $150,000. And we'll just reserve that presentation until I go through this entire list. The third item is the transfer. If you notice when we get under personnel, we have had a further resignation of an elementary teacher. We believe through the attrition process, we can transfer another person on staff to fill that, and that would net us a savings of approximately $68,000. Obviously, special education has garnered a lot of special interest. Mrs. Penza, Mrs. Mikowski, and I had a very heart-to-heart meeting today and took a very, very close look at the particular areas where there were some increases that we were a little nervous about, particularly in the 1,200, 300, and the 1,200, 500 accounts, which are contracted services and placements. And I am happy to report to the board that we were able to find an additional $200,000 reduction within those accounts. And that still will allow us to maintain the placements that we know that are there. We did a very thorough review of all of those placements. I would caution the board that any new placement or a number of placements starting in September through next year could cause that number to fluctuate wildly. but I think we have to go with what we have for now, and we can certainly recommend fully the 200,000. If you couple that with the original 150,000 that we reduced the special ed, you have a full $350,000 reduction within the special ed budget. So if you add all of those up, the total since last Thursday amounts to $472,000. This has been hard work to come to this. It's with a lot of pain, again, to make some of these decisions. But again, there's a lot of pain being suffered on all sides of this issue. So if you take the $685,827 deficit, again, making some assumptions that Mrs. Penza mentioned, and you subtract the $472,000, the current proposed deficit, this is not final by any means, is now at approximately $214,000. Comments? Questions?
Can we bring into that what we talked to Mr. Smith and Mrs. Penza, I talked to them today at lunch, for the overtime adjustment?
We have not made any further adjustment other than these 4 things that I mentioned officially. So if there's more money to be offered, I have not heard about it officially yet. I don't know about Mrs. Penza.
I'm not sure of the amount. I know it was talked about.
I have 29,901.
Reduction in overtime?
So what do you want the amount of overtime to be? I think it was 15,000, correct?
15,000.
So the adjustment needs to be made off of that.
Off of 44,901.20. So you've added 20 cents onto that.
So we're looking at an additional $15,000 reduction?
You take the subtract 15 off of 44.
Right, but then I'm going to have Social Security and Medicare on that, so it's going to be a little bit more of a reduction, which I can't give you right now, but I can factor it in.
So we're looking at approximately, what, another $30,000 of reduction?
A little bit more.
Okay. We're under 200,000.
So, according to my math, 214 minus 30, someone can quick do that mental math. Mr. Shaheen.
We're under 200,000. We talk round numbers.
183. So at this point,
What's in the fund balance? What's the, how much money's in there?
Well, as of March, I was projecting 3.15, but I am in the process today of going through the end of April, which hasn't been completed yet.
So we're almost at that $750,000 that we were, that 750,000 that we were talking about. That 750,000 that we had originally talked about pulling out.
Yeah, we're a little over that still.
Right, we're still a little over it, but we're close. About 100,000 of that is also additional capital reserve that we were putting in as a line item.
Correct. Well,
No, we didn't put
we
that
didn't put
in.
it in there.
It's not in.
No.
So
it's not in yet.
if you put anything towards that, it will go up.
Okay.
Good.
It says placeholder though.
Yeah, but it's not in.
On the bottom.
it's on the bottom. That's not in the math equation.
The transfer, can you, again, it's a personnel issue, so can you tell us as much as you can?
Sure. We have, for the last couple of years, a number of years ago, I had proposed, and actually we're very happy with this, but again, we're trying to pull out all the stops in terms of balancing the budget. I don't bring this recommendation with any more joy than I have a lot of these others. But at this point in the budget, and my philosophy has been this, to have someone, this individual is more taken on a consultant role and not working directly with students. The individual that has been functioning in this position, it's a kind of a learning coaching position, has done a very good job in helping us, frankly, to maintain some of our cost issues that we have with some of our special education due process. We are prepared to pick up that slack and run with it now that I believe we have in place better understanding what we need to do to keep those costs down. So I, in good conscience, really felt it wasn't fair to have someone on the staff not working with students at a budget time like this when we were looking at losing personnel otherwise. So I don't know if that answers the question or if you need more detail.
No, it's not.
It comes with great pain to make that recommendation. I have a lot of respect for the person that has been in this position and the work they have been doing for us. But There's paint all over the room tonight, so.
My only concern is that we've had a decrease in special education lawsuits last year. Maybe I'm wrong, did this person help facilitate, make sure?
I think this person, yes.
My only concern, fellow board members, is that will we go back and do, where a couple of years ago we had 2 or 3 lawsuits where we ended up settling, and it was more than the $68,000 that we're possibly laying out. That's my only concern, is that...
If we can find a way to keep this, I would like to,
Okay,
but
well,
there's a lot of other things we've heard tonight that
Okay.
people would like to keep.
I'm not saying don't get rid of it, I'm just saying is be careful, we don't want to fall back into that.
I agree with you totally.
Paperwork is falling behind, whatever. I just want to fall into 3 or 4 lawsuits a year, and we end up settling for, $150,000, $200,000, and we could spend $68,000 and settle, and have only 1 a year. So, just my own.
Well, I'll take general feedback from the board.
Did we also not discuss that there was a possibility that this person would still be able to roam and get into some of the other buildings?
I'm not
Or facilitate some training or
perhaps we do some of that.
Yeah.
We could remain maybe on in-service days, but they're going to have a day-to-day responsibility to teach kids, so it's going to be difficult.
So for the sake of discussion here, if we were to take if we were to take the same amount that we used last year, $766,000 for the fund balance, that leaves us still with $67,000. Can you find another $67,000 somewhere?
If I could just, I'll pipe in. I've done some work on the activity fee structure, and I haven't had an opportunity to turn it over to the business office and then let the different high school and middle school folks take a look at the rosters and make sure everything's correct. But my initial calculations are that if we had used this year's numbers, revenues would be somewhere around $160,000 in activity fees. We have $100,000 in the budget. The other thing that we talked about a couple of weeks ago was, and this was Mr. Legath's suggestion, was raising ticket prices for adults and students from $5 and $3 a piece to $6 and $4 a piece. Raising ticket prices just $1 generates, based on past 3 years worth of ticket sales, an additional $11,000 in revenue. The other thing that he had suggested was perhaps raising the physical fee from $15 to, you can pick a number, $25. That additional $10 per physical would increase revenues by another $4,000. So
still do the same number of physicals.
you may reduce the physicals because folks may decide to go use their doctor instead of coming here to the high school or wherever it is that they administer them. I'm just throwing out those numbers. People can take a percentage of those as you like.
The activity fee, you said we got 100 in there.
That's the placeholder.
Projected what?
About $160,000.
And that's providing we get the same amount of number of students. And understand you can punch a hole in any one of the arguments up there to be able to look at it. But based upon the numbers you have, it almost makes, again, we're trying to balance this thing. Go with the 766. Immediately upon starting the new school year, we go to austerity where you've got to tighten the budget down instead of waiting until October, November timeframe like we did last year to tighten down. We just go immediately into it. And maybe we can, by watching everything, tighten this thing down where we can make this thing work.
Well, I think, I throw out those numbers. The administration hasn't had an opportunity to go through.
But your numbers exceeded that $67,000.
Well, we originally placed 100,000.
Yeah, they're over by about 60.
But I'm saying, but you put 60, so you got 60 of that 67 shortage we had. Then you came up with 11 with ticket sales and another 4 with physical. So you easily replaced that $67,000 shortfall that Mr. Sermonero came by saying we wouldn't go with the same $766,000 out of the general fund.
Yeah, obviously I wouldn't recommend going full tilt with those numbers because it could be something less.
Well, you were over what we were looking for, so even if you had some fudge factor in there that. I just don't. Again, your emails today with housing values dropping, I just don't see the ability to go back out and go much above that Act 1 index that we've already got in there. I don't have the appetite to do that, nor do I think many of the board members do. So anything we can do to go with at that index at the most is what we need to really shoot for.
So are you asking for consensus here on any of those items?
I was just throwing that out there because
under the policy.
I was going to wait till we got the policy,
Right.
but we're still talking about budget now, so
With the
I just
ticket
kind of throw
sales,
that
like,
out there. And
You know, it costs more to go to a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it costs more to go to McDonald's. I think, raising $1 is very affordable for a person to go.
When was the
for
last time our
entertainment.
ticket sales were adjusted? Our pricing?
When we went with the ticket, like 2 years ago, like the.
So it's been 2
5
years without a price adjustment in our athletic ticket sales.
I think that's reasonable. I know when I used to go to sporting events at other schools, we are on the lower end of the county for what you have to pay to go into an event. I do think, I know it's not popular, but I really do think we need to look at who we're giving passes to. I think that needs to be tightened up. I think we give out too many passes because that would directly affect our revenue.
Before we get into the revenue, those potential revenue changes, let's just back up a second. Is there anyone that's adamantly against using $766,000 in the fund balance?
No.
Is there anybody who would oppose that?
What's the math then, if that happens?
That's about $67,000. If we used it all.
Now 2.4, 2.3, 2.4, that's projected though. That's not actual.
That's really what we need for July and August, so we'd be right at
Assuming that it comes in where I think it's going.
And just so you know, next year you're starting off that much in the hole.
Again, assuming
And
we
luckily-
used all of it,
Right.
which we didn't use it all. We touched a very small amount of it this year. I mean, I understand that you're projecting,
Right.
you're
As we
hoping.
tighten up the budget, eventually we are going to start using it.
But, over the
That's the
last
hazard.
number of years, since at least I've been on the board, except for one time, we've ended up with surpluses, and in most cases, the surplus was equal to the amount that we raised taxes, or very close to it. So, we just have to start watching the budget and start watching our balance sheets on a monthly basis.
I think we also, since we're so close, I think we also just take the PASPA number out and go find a reason why we need to put it back in. And I think we should say there's $10,000, $11,000 right there. Take it out and go research why we need to put it back in. Let's assume we can just get it out of
I
there.
think part of that's also what bonds our treasurer.
Pardon?
I think our treasurer gets bonded through there, but we
I
can.
think the treasurer and the
I know there's
secretary
something
both
else
get
there. I
bonded.
can't remember
I
what
think
it
it
is.
bonds both treasurer and secretary, but again, don't hold me to that.
I mean, the bonding's coming up, I think, in May, and I don't know.
I know it's not through PSBA, that's not who I get the bill from.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a multi-peril.
Well, can I propose replacing that with the indoor garden? We had an awful lot of discussion. I heard no reaction from any school board members about.
We're not moving
that.
forward, though. We need to get to zero before we start adding things
I
back in.
understand,
We're not there yet.
But as one of the people, we haven't cut a single sport in this process. We've cut some coaches. I don't understand why this particular program is being singled out as compared to all the other programs we have in the school.
I think the issue is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Could we, one of the things that, we're missing is the fact that, not only is this a valuable program in terms of a music program, but there's an awful lot of students involved in this between the middle school program, the indoor guard, the indoor percussion program. It's over 60 students that you'd be collecting $2,500 in additional activity fees for if you continue this program. It's not a dollar for dollar cost to the school district, and quite frankly, it's only $9,900 out of a $50 million budget.
My personal opinion is we ask every department to make cuts, and just every department has made cuts. And, it's not like this school is decimating its music program. We spend $2 million a year on music here. This is a $9,900.
Where do you get that $2 million quote from? Because I have not
I got
seen
that from our business office.
I don't believe that's correct.
Maybe what we should do, to go back to the fact that, every department has had to make cuts, maybe we can go back to the music department like we did to the athletic department and say, okay, you want to save middle school sports, can you give us the same type of dollar figure savings? Maybe there's other savings that they could offer.
Well, how about a different proposal? How about we propose putting half of the amount back in, being funded by the school district, and half being funded by outside organizations if they can agree to raise it? Well, I mean, one of the things I'll say to you is, this is a program which for years we tried to get it added into the budget. The indoor garden, indoor percussion program was around for several years. Finally, it's only 2 years ago that this board agreed to finally fund it, even though it was a program which was doing a great deal of good for a lot of students who were in the school district. It's only 2 years ago we made a commitment to add it, and now, a short 2 years later, we're saying, let's take it out. Quite frankly, I don't understand that. It's such a small dollar figure out of this entire budget. I don't understand the logic in terms of this.
No, and I believe any program can stay if the funding is found.
Well,
what prevents the organization that was funding it for so many years from refunding it? I mean, the school district just recently picked up the funding for this 2 years ago. If it's been around 7 years prior to that, what stops that? Well, who provided the funding for it to begin with? Why can't they provide the funding now?
Music boosters.
Music boosters? Why can't the music boosters fund it now?
Well, what I'm proposing is, why don't we put back in the budget half of the amount if they'll agree to match that?
My impression is, if we're going to be adding things back, I'd like to be adding back aids in a classroom or some other place, not for a percussion.
Not for the students, right, Andrew?
No, aids are for students. Aids directly are there for students, and those aids are there to help students succeed with the very basic fundamental skills that they need to move on to the next level. Okay? So I'm very pro-education and very pro-student. I'm trying to balance a budget. And there's organizations out there that can step up to the plate and fund some of these things that they used to fund. I don't think that's a lot to ask in these times in particular. That's my position.
I know the bulk of the cuts in the athletic department was by not filling all the positions. That was, I think, over half of the, like, even though we have coaching positions, they're not being filled. There's only, so maybe I'm going to come back to it. Maybe music can go back and look at it and reevaluate it. They might say, gee, we're not going to fill this position. I'm going to staff it with a volunteer. Give them the same opportunity that we gave the athletic department to relook at their budget and come up with the same dollar figure, but maybe differently distributed.
And there again, if the funding can be found, the program can continue, correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of anything.
I think, too, with all due respect, I feel like we keep being told that we're singling out music. And I don't think we have. We went to every department and we asked them to cut the percent of their budget. And, I mean, it's the same thing you do at your house. It's the same thing that businesses do when they don't have the money. And the cuts get felt across the board. So I feel like, we keep being accused of singling out music. I don't feel we did that, and I agree. I think it's the department's call as to how they want to save some money. So if they can cut something else or they want to choose something else, they should have that option. But I don't feel like I don't feel like I singled them out or that you singled them out. I think they were asked to do the same thing that everybody else was asked to do.
We went back to the administration. They're going to do less in the administrative and central office. They have the headcount up there. The building secretaries. The middle school gave up 20% of their budget, or $20,000 of their budget for supplies and materials. So every building got hit.
And
it wasn't
the
just
special ed learning coach, which is a significant.
We're taking a learning coach away from special ed, so it's not that anybody singled it out. So
I would just
Mr. Legaff had tremendous success going back and
he came up with two proposals.
If I could, so why can't music take a second look, and maybe Mr. McAdams and the other folks there can figure out ways to save that money but not totally eliminate any of those programs?
I just want to add a comment in the middle of all that. When Mr. Legaff was given the directive, and pretty much came from me, I said, we're taking a 25% cut. That's where we're starting. It's going to be tough this year. Obviously, there was a panic earlier in the winter. There was an auditorium here full of people concerned about the middle school sports program. I'm not going to take any credit for what he gave me. He came back to me with this. And I congratulated him for doing that, for thinking out of the box. I mean, you all hear that cliche. He thought out of the box and he came back with a plan. So I would be happy to facilitate that with the music department if we can relook at this.
I agree with that. I think it's the best way to go.
Now, speaking of that, can we talk about the aids? I know Mrs. Trainer was going to talk about
Yes,
that, but
she
we
is.
never got to the specifics. We
Mrs.
got the
Trainer,
proposal late in the day.
board members, I do apologize, but you know we were working around the clock here to try to get you this, so you got it late. Wasn't in your packet, but you should have received it. Mrs. Trainer is here to speak to it.
I was asked on Friday to take another $150,000 off the proposal that I had shared with you on Thursday. And so I tried to come up with a compromise both for learning support and regular classroom aids, and also be able to help you out with those double runs that we keep referencing. So the best I could do is on the regular ed side to do the double runs and the commitment we've made to the kindergarten, and then allow some discretion at the building level, whether it's 3 days a week in first grade and 2 days a week in second grade, that we would have 30 minutes of the support where, depending on the time of the year, sometimes it's more needed in first grade at the beginning of the year. You can flip it more to second grade at the end of the year and allow the building principals to manage that. And then over in learning support, I know you felt strongly about that, but when I was reducing regular ed to bare bones, I also looked at 3 proposals that I shared with you. The only one that could get me to that $200,000 one would be to take the 3-hour aids that I had given you the stats on and share them between 2 teachers in a class, in a building. So for the original proposal a number of weeks ago was 3 hours for each person, and so I pulled it back to 3 hours for every 2 teachers. And that could be at the discretion, one day shared during the day, however a principal wanted to use them. And that came out to $199.08. So that was my ability to get to $200,000. And just, I know we've talked about it a number of times, just for your point of reference, in that bare bones program that I had Dr. Otto share with you, the only cost differential that I needed in order to help you with your double runs was to the tune of $12,290, gave you the extra manpower in order to be able to save those 3 buses. So that was that portion of the $199 that would allow me to be able to have manpower to watch those students, came to a total of $12,300.
Questions?
And that would give you, just for another point of reference, a total of 10 individuals that would service learning support throughout the district, and a total of 10 individuals with different working hours based on the needs of when first grade and kindergarten and second grade have their core content subjects in regular ed also. Total of 20 of our existing aides would have different levels of part-time positions.
You're saying that the double run extra hours is coming out at $107,540. It's $18,000 in there. Is that $12,000 in there?
12,300 of that is for the double run coverages.
And we net a little over 100,000. Well, we're going to net about 80, maybe 90 out of that with the double runs.
If I may interject, seems like we're getting close. I know Mrs. Penza has to start getting very busy on putting a budget together, so we are at the point here where we need to put something on paper to get a proposed final for you for May 23rd. Yeah, do you want to update, are you keeping score over there? Can you add up where we kind of are with everything that we...
Yeah, I've got it.
Oh, you do have it?
Well, that was part of that initial rundown that you went that got us down to the deficit.
Yeah, but there
About
was
$67,000.
So with everything we've talked about, it's $67,000.
Ballpark, about 67.
Does that include what Mr. Seminaro suggested?
Yeah, that's $766,000.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, with the 54 for the athletic facilitator, the aid reduction, the retirement replacement, special ed outplacement, maintenance overtime, the fund balance of 116, all came out to like $618,000. We're at 685, so some ballpark around $67,000.
So the items that we still have to look at that could potentially make up that 67,000, I have is to review the PASBA fees, a second look at the $100,000 placeholder fee for activity fees, a review of upping the price of ticket sales, and raising the price of physicals. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 things that we need to take a closer look at to see if our placeholder numbers are accurate or if we could use any of that.
I have a question. Has anybody been in touch with all of our charter students to see if there's any way we can bring them back into the district? Because right now that proposed reduction in the charter school subsidy was $176,000. I mean, have we been in touch with our charter school students? I know other districts are doing that. They're trying to bring them back.
They usually bring that, if they have, the way that some of the districts have brought, the first answer is no, we haven't. And the second answer is that I'm aware that some schools have offered some replacement programs. Some of those are not actually coming back to the school district. They're actually going to another form of less expensive cyber education. So it's certainly something we can look at.
I know BCIU a few months ago, they were starting their own charter school, cyber charter school, thinking that it would be,
it might be something we can...
within local control and at a more affordable price. Maybe that's something we should be looking at. Maybe we also should be, thinking of sending a letter to our legislative representatives about that. Maybe they can't tackle the big education cut, but they can at least restore charter school subsidies, because that's an unfunded mandate that we have no control of. That is $176,000. That we'd be okay if we still had that money that we had since they've put charter schools in.
Both are good suggestions. Yeah, I think I was reading it. Pottstown, or one of the other ones, they put together a task force to actually go out and market the school district back to those local charter schools to see if they could get them to re-enroll.
Give you what you need.
Then Mr. Seminaro,
we have to put something on paper that's balanced.
Right. I think you have to form the aid number up just to make sure we got that correct. But I think if we look at the PASBA number for 11, again, I'm a ballpark. I know Mr. Basil had 60,000 on his, but let's just go with 40. Okay, let's just put it as a placeholder at 40 additional $1,000 for the activity fee.
So that's now $140,000.
Correct. Right. $11,000 approximately for the tickets when we do the adjustment there. $4,000 for the physical approximately. That gets us $66,000, and amongst friends we're even, and we go from there. You got we're balanced.
Which means we're accepting the new revised aid.
We'd have to accept that, yes.
Also, I haven't officially heard it, but I assume you're going to allow me to go forward with the athletic facilitator position.
Correct. Well, everything that was brought in, I think it'd be very hard to believe we wouldn't, because we've already run those numbers down. And
some of this requires some advanced legwork, and if I could get started on that, especially in the transition with the athletic position.
I don't know what the fellow board members feel, but that brings us just about.
I mean, if I have consensus, I don't need to vote. If I have consensus, I'll start that process.
Correct. I thought we had that last week.
Yeah, I thought we had that.
Just want to make sure. Exactly. Okay, I'll do that. Mrs. Penza, you have what you need? So can we summarize for the public where that is?
You want me to do it? The total budget? Well, the total budget. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Starting off.
Based on review
But
this
that's
evening.
where the tax impact of the index.
Yeah, this assumes that you're going to use, we essentially balance the budget with the assumption that you're going to raise taxes, I got a mic right here. Raise taxes by the index, which would increase taxes by 0.5 mils approximately. You're going to use $766,000 out of the fund balance, taking it down to around $2.3 million. What else? We are going to eliminate the PASBA dues. You're going to raise ticket prices from $5 and $3 to $6 and $4 respectively for adults and students. You're going to raise the cost of physicals from $15 to $25. We're going to implement the activity fee that will be discussed later. And we're reducing the overtime budget in facilities by $30,000 approximately. The AD position shuffle, about $54,000, reducing aides by another $150,000. Special ed coach and the special ed budget for another $268,000 in cost savings.
I have no further information.
Any other comments from board members on this item? Okay.
Many of you have endured a long season since January. While this obviously is not official tonight, it represents a starting point. I don't say any of this with a smile, but there are a number of people I need to thank, especially on my administrative team, business manager, Mr. Legath, and everybody that's worked very hard in a very difficult economic time to try to bring this together. If you sat in this room over the last 4 months, you know it hasn't been a lot of fun. But I want to thank again all the board members who have also been supportive of what we're trying to do. I don't think anybody sits here with a smile on their face tonight. The process had to take place. It has come to at least a stop now where we can present something for you in the public to view over the next month. You'll obviously have ample opportunity on both sides of the issue to make comments. But again, this is a process that under state law we have to go through, and we have to come to a conclusion. It can't just linger. So if you're politically inclined and you can squeeze any more money out of Pennsylvania, the government in Harrisburg, we have letters out there. We've asked you to write them all along. Perhaps you have. Everybody's going to feel some pain here. The people that are supporting programs, the people that have to pay the taxes, which is all of you. No matter where any of us lives, we're all paying taxes somewhere. It's been a very, very difficult year, and I thank the board. It's been very hard, and it's been a difficult process. It's very taxing to all of us. Thank the administration for what the professional staff has done and the concessions they have made. It's been a long road. So I don't mean to lengthen the evening, but it's been 4 months of hard work, and hopefully we're getting very, very close.
I'm sorry, I have one follow-up question.
Yeah.
Mr. Penza. Is there any salary increases in this budget that have not been approved by the board yet? Or anything that's been budgeted for possible salary increases yet that we have not discussed yet? Okay, so those are in there yet?
We have, and I would defer to the board, obviously, very early on in the process last year, I took a no increase in my salary. I would prefer to have that conversation with the board in public or in private, but I really don't think it's going to be a very difficult decision.
You brought it up, I just asked.
Well, I thought in terms of your comment. I mean,
Dr. Otto, I didn't...
No, I understand, and I don't...
It's a general question.
I'm just answering, and I will certainly be willing to do what I need to do to help the process.
Well, that's generous of you, and we appreciate that. So we can talk about that in an executive session.
It wasn't meant to any specific person, but thank you, Dr. Otto.
Obviously, there's still more work to be done. This is my brief little editorial here before we open up for public comment. There's still more work that needs to be done on the budget. Numbers need to be worked over by our business office to make sure that we're there, on paper at least. And those numbers are still subject to change between now and June 30th. We don't know what the state's going to say. We don't know what other additional information will be coming in. The administration is still inquiring with our insurance carriers and some other folks where there may be some additional savings. And so we'll keep working the process. At this time, if anyone from the public would like to make any comments on that section of the agenda under finance, please feel free to step up, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Helen Poole, 443 Hill Road, Amity Township. I commend the board tremendously for their efforts in trying to streamline spending in order to provide a balanced budget without extreme cost to the taxpayers who have been for years overburdened. I hope that all of the board members will vote favorably to remove $766,000 from the fund balance towards the deficit. I listened to Mr. Ross speak on Thursday evening about money being transferred to the Capital Reserve Fund. I'm not sure that I agree with his statement, and I'm a little confused by it since his statement indicated that that fund had been replenished over the years by surplus funds. I don't understand where those surplus funds have come from when we've had to use Act 1 exemptions and property tax increases to balance the budget over the past several years. Please don't overlook the fact that every time you raise our taxes and increase our millage, it's piggybacked. It sets the standard for the tax increases for the next year. School property taxes have, you know what they've risen in the past 10 years. What you may think a half a mil here, a quarter mil there is insignificant, in the long run, the results are drastic when you look at the millage increases between 1995 and 2010. As I stated, I do commend the board for your efforts in trying to hold expenses down. The budget for the indoor guard and percussion groups, from what I understand and I've heard, is $10,000. For the sake of the 60-some kids that are involved heart and soul in these programs, I will ask once again that you eliminate these cuts from the table. These programs are every bit as important as football, basketball, baseball. The kids in color guard and music also rely on these experiences for scholarship money for college. It's not just football and basketball that give scholarship funds. These kids that are involved in music and guard also are looking towards their future in that direction. And did you also realize that over the last 7 years, 100% of the kids that have been involved in band and music have gone on to college? 100%. How many of your other programs can make that claim? Look seriously at what funds you have on hand before you consider cutting these programs. The kids should not have to pay the price for the mistakes of the past. We can't fix what has been done in the past. But in moving forward, please don't leave these kids behind. Their programs are extremely important on many levels. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich Martino, 225 West Welsh Drive, Douglasville. I'd simply like to talk about the $500,000 increase that's proposed. It's not a $500,000 for this coming year because historically, especially in the school district, taxes never go down. So it's a $500,000 for this year and next year and the year after because it never goes away. My question is, why are we raising the public's taxes to $500,000 when you're still going to have a $2.3 million fund balance? Why do you need a $2.3 million fund balance? Why can't you balance the budget by reducing that to $1.5 million, $1.8 million?
You could. That's the simple answer is you could spend your fund balance down to $0. We do have an issue from July 1st to the end of August where we have to make payroll and we have debt service payments that need to be made. And those payments in total are around $2.1 million. So if you spend less than that out of your fund, more than that out of your fund balance, you have a balance something less than that, you'd have to go out and get a tax revenue anticipation note from a local bank to cover your costs, to float the district essentially, and use that money as working capital until the end of August when your tax revenues start to come in again. It's not recommended you run your fund balance down to $0 because at the end of the day...
I wasn't suggesting taking it down to $0, Andrew, but when you do your budget for next year, does that not cover through August?
The budget runs from July 1st to June 30th.
So last year's budget should cover through June 30th.
June 30th of this year, that's right.
Pardon?
It covers right up through June 30th of this year.
And the new budget would cover from July 1st on, so I don't understand where the fund balance...
It's a cash flow issue. So what you have is, what we're starting off with essentially on July 1st is the money that we have sitting in our fund balance. It's like a checkbook, right? So you have that money sitting there in your checking account. We don't get paid until the end of August with the real estate taxes and that sort of thing start to come in. So between July 1st and August 20th or 27th or something like that, this district spends at least $2 million in payroll and debt service. And you have to have the money to pay those bills.
I don't think that's his question. His question at the end of this year, we would be 3.1 as Mrs. Penza projected, but if the following year is when we would be down to the 1.8, so the year of 12-13 is when we would have trouble meeting our bills in July and August, not this July and August. Correct? That's your question.
We dip into the fund balance at the end of our year.
It's a year ahead.
Yeah.
This particular July and August, we would have enough because we're projecting taking out the balance next year's budget. So in theory, yes, but then the following year we would be out of our fund balance.
You're just moving the deficit 10 months ahead or behind. So what happens is you start off the fund balance this year at $3.1 million.
Correct.
We'd spend it down by $2 million in August. So we'd be down at $1.1 million, and then we start to receive our tax revenues for the year as we spend them, right? And then when we get to June 30th, we'd be at...
But very simply, you have done a study to determine what a minimum fund balance is. We're not just pulling that out of the air.
We actually have a fund balance policy that we have to pass now. It's been required by GASB, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the agenda. But, I mean, essentially, you know, think of it this way. We have a couple of lean years ahead of us. Next year's probably not going to be any better. And the year after that, and maybe even the year after that. So the question really is, how long can you make your fund balance last? That's another way to look at it. I mean, we got to be thinking 3-4 years ahead, and which is kind of goes to what Mr. Ross was talking about. We're going to have capital expenditures coming down the pike as well, whether we like it or not. And you know, so are we putting money aside to take care of the capital expenditures that are coming? You know, we're trying to be proactive and we're trying to think ahead. If we were to spend all the money this year, an extra $600,000, whatever it may be, instead of a tax increase, what happens next year or the year after the year after? You have less fund balance to work with to bridge the gap. At that point in time, do you raise taxes by $0.5 million or by $1 million or $1.5 million? You know, this is the balance and this is the conversation that we're having up here on the board. We've got 9 different people with different opinions about how we should slice the pie to get there.
Thank you.
Hi, Bob Smith, 105 Kettle Lane in Douglasville. And I guess I'm just looking for some clarification. You mentioned that we're going to create, for lack of a better term, a new position for the athletic director. Does this such position exist in other districts, or is this something that we just thought of on our own?
I can't speak to what may be in other districts. Every district kind of tackles their athletic responsibilities in a little bit different way. I think the predominant model is to have an AD, but sometimes that'll be a half-time teacher, sometimes it'll... So when you hear districts say they have an AD, you have to be careful to have comparisons that are the same. We were fortunate over the years here in Daniel Boone, like many of the school districts in Berks County, to have what we would call a full-time AD, somebody that dedicated their full responsibilities to that. in light of the acceptance by Mr. Legath to take a job in the neighboring district, and in light of our ongoing budget problem, some suggestions were brought forward to me because we were going to take actually a little bit more drastic approach to it and try to just divvy those responsibilities up in another way. And the building principals at the secondary level came to me, said, Dr. Otto, we can't do this. We need to approach this in a little bit different way. So I, just as we've been doing with all this, I said, think out of the box for me. Come back with an idea. So this is the idea that they came back with that would, as I had said earlier, fulfill what we need to have done as a district and the responsibilities that we need, because as you can see, athletics is, you're hearing from everybody, a major part of our program. We need somebody to oversee it. So we believe that with this, I'll call it a hybrid, for lack of a better word, with this hybrid approach, that we can take this kind of position and mold it to what we need it, and do it at a less cost. And there is some further responsibility that will fall back to the building level administration. So we're going to, divide up some of the responsibilities in a little bit different way, but still have someone there to do the day-to-day stuff that we need to get done.
I was just wondering, is there a concern that we may drop the ball and miss some items that we didn't consider?
I would say that we believe we've thought it out the best that we can, and obviously doing this pending approval of the budget next year will be our way of seeing if this is the best way to get this done. But we have high hopes for it, and we believe that it will meet our needs. And you can certainly, I know the board has had, their chance to have input on this, and my administrative team. This is, again, not just a Dr. Otto or a superintendent mandate. This was something that was done collectively with the administrative team to try to come up with the best idea we could based on all of the budgetary issues that we're faced with.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Sherry Mondak. I'm at 117 Warman Road in Douglasville. I'd like to speak to the 25% cut that we've been talking so much about tonight. The cut that obviously required us to cut the program is important to these kids here. As a matter of public record, I would like to make it well known that a 25% cut to the music program cuts way deeper than a 25% cut to the athletic program. Some of the board members were suggesting that we go back and look at the budget, try and find some dollars, get creative. I am here to tell you that the budget is a bare bones budget as it is. There is nothing else in there to cut. This 25% did not allow us to cut out meals or anything that was fluff in the budget. Our budget is bare bones, and we are now cutting staff and programs. There's nothing else there for us to cut, and I would ask you to please reconsider, as we're finding more dollars in these budgets, to please at least reduce the amount of the cut that we've been required to take. We have nowhere else to go. We cannot get creative. We cannot go back to parent volunteers. We already are using all of our parent volunteers. There's nothing else for us to do. We can't let these kids down, and I think that it would be fair for us to ask, if not for the program to be refunded, at least for the cut to be less drastic than it was. Any support you provide would be greatly appreciated.
Good evening, Connor Kurtz, 709 Ridge Drive, Douglasville. I have a few observations tonight. First, I'd like to note, I've been reading about, a news story came out today in Harrisburg, the new, I think, Senate PA budget, or the Republican proposed budget, will be giving a bit more money to the schools. It'll change the governor's intentions. I just read that today. I think that's interesting to note. And also, I'd like to thank a few people tonight, a few different groups. I'd like to thank the teachers' union for accepting a pay freeze. That was a momentous achievement that the school board also worked out. So I'd like to thank all of you for working towards that. I'd also like to thank Dr. Otto for accepting a pay freeze. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. And I'd like to thank the teachers' union again and the school board for achieving that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mrs. Spencer, can you address that state senate? Because we talked about that in the finance committee meeting where that came out, and unfortunately, Daniel Boone doesn't look like they're going to get any more money. So.
All right, the information that we received and that we're looking at is that money that's coming out is for districts that their projected revenue from the state is less than 2008-2009 levels. Daniel Boone actually happens to right now be projected to be getting more than that. So they will not be taking any money away from us, but we will not be getting any more, according to the spreadsheets and the information we are receiving.
Hi, my name's Monica Hamill, 508 Monroe Street, Birdsboro. One thing, I was going to meetings pretty regularly, and at one of the meetings we talked about getting new copiers, and we had recontracted with the copying businesses, and we got a nice, some money back, I guess, or at least we don't have to pay as much. What I also heard during the conversation is that teachers still have printers in their classrooms, and I'm not sure how many teachers currently have printers in their classrooms, and whether the school district is paying for those cartridges that are in their printers. Do we know how much money we spend on those individual cartridges for the teachers? Because I've worked on the college level, and we had a centralized copying center, and we were not allowed to have printers in our rooms because it cost more to have a printer in our room. So I didn't know if we had figures for what the cost is.
Mr. Jacobs, do you have any information on what we spend on printers and papers and cartridges?
I don't have an exact breakdown on the cartridge costs. We are spending $74,000 on all supplies for the computer production in the school districts. We are, with Mrs. Penza, we're looking at a arrangement with the copy company that we're going to go with to provide us with a software package that we can control how many copies will be printed on printers, set a restriction that anything over a certain number will go to copiers, which traditionally print at a much lower cost. So we are looking at that alternative, and we will bring that online this summer. But exact cost for cartridges, I can't tell you what it is. Also, with printers, we put printers in special ed rooms for confidential printing purposes, and we also have printers in classrooms, so that when students do certain projects, they can print out their results and give them to the teachers. We don't provide printers to every classroom in the school district.
That's all I wanted to know, because I know the cost of a cartridge that I use for my printer is very expensive, and especially I know when my kids come home with a lot of print ink pictures, I know color ink is very expensive. So I just wanted to address that and see if maybe we could look into that a little bit closer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Shane Cockle, 830 Geigertown Road. I would like to point out a terminology I've been hearing over the past few months is a necessity. You took $450,000 from the education of kindergarten. There was a proposal to bring back buses. The term I heard was, well, it's not a necessity. I would like to go back and point out that middle school sports is not a necessity. Okay? It doesn't count for a college resume. It doesn't help get any kind of scholarships. It's just an activity. Okay? If we are going to go back to a necessity, Middle school sports funding should stop altogether. That funding should be put into the capital reserves for the repairs and the upkeep of the $6 million stadium that we built in good faith for our sports program. If we would cut middle school sports, there's plenty of outside organizations that will pick up the sports. You have MNEAC, you have the Berkshire Red Sox. There's plenty other outside organizations that students can still participate. What I would recommend is before any more of our taxpayers' dollars goes to paying for something that does not help these kids to get into a college or university, it needs to be looked at and needs to be cut. We have a $6 million stadium that's going to be constant upkeep. If you're looking for funding to go into the capital reserve, if you make a cut to middle school sports, you can designate all that money to the capital reserve for those projects. And also, Dr. Otto said about Tom Legath thinking outside the box. He should have never had $10,000 of taxpayers' money put into an account to feed the athletes. That is a direct spit in the taxpayer's face. I cannot believe the school board would allow funding for food for our athletes. Also, a cut was $5,000 in socks for our athletes. Another cut he made was $20,000 on vans that are now paid off. So it's not a cut. It was free money anyway. The vans are paid off. You would have had a $20,000 surplus regardless of a cut. So I would not consider a $10,000 meal ticket and a $20,000 payoff in vans. Please consider cut the middle school sports program. Thanks.
Thanks, Chief. Can I make a, Mrs. Penza, can you for the record state what we spend on the stadium and what we spend on this parking lot? I don't think it was $6 million, and I want to make sure that the rest of the public understands it's not close to $6 million, and it was mentioned twice. So for the record straight, roughly?
It wasn't, but I don't have that document with me.
But it wasn't near $6 million.
And no.
It's about 4.6.
I sent the board the last update, but
That's
I don't
stadium.
have the document with me.
The combined project
I asked
is around
specifically one stadium.
$3 million for the stadium, another $1.6 million in parking and.
Okay, well,
those
that's
types of
different.
improvements.
Thank you. So the stadium is roughly $3 million.
You don't get one without the other.
Got it.
That's not what I asked.
Any engineer fees? There were no engineering
Okay.
fees to award. Okay.
Yeah, you had your 3 minutes.
I thought he was addressing me.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Lori Hollowell, 801 President in Douglasville. In the initial budget presentation in January, there was a line item of secondary music reductions. That line item was reflected as eliminating winter color guard, winter percussion, high school jazz band, and the high school select chorus. During discussions throughout the spring at the extracurricular activity fee committee, it was decided to possibly reinstate the jazz band and the select chorus. Has any decision been made on this yet?
Or you want to take this? Talking about the jazz band and select course.
That would be part of,
No, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, you take it. I'll back you up.
they are going to be under the fee structure. Those programs will be intact.
So
And when we get to the extracurricular policy, we'll have discussion on that.
Thank you.
They were saved, basically. They were saved.
Yeah.
They were saved. Right.
Earl Coppell, 268 Colorado Drive. I also for cutting the sports program. here in the middle school. I remember sitting in Dr. Otto's office last year saying how much trouble that the kids were having in their sports, and he said it's an extracurricular activity. I said, who's in charge of the coaches? The AD. You go to the AD, he sends you the principal sends you back to the AD says it's the coach's discretion. The kids get nothing from these sports. Nothing. They don't get the right teaching for these sports. My kid's in a cast for 8 weeks from coaching. We do not, this is not a necessity for anything. The money that we're spending on the sports, and it only benefits the kids that are the favorites of the teachers in the school. We went to open gym for baseball, just to give you an example. Both middle school coaches were not there. The high school coaches were there. And I said to the high school coach, McCord, I said, where are the coaches? These are the kids, these are the guys who are going to coach our kids. He said, well, Chappelle is coaching wrestling, and the other guy, he doesn't want to coach until he comes to coach. So they weren't there for 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 4 practices, and they're supposed to be teaching our kids. He coaches 3 sports, wrestling, football, and baseball. I don't know what his salary is. I guess it's $3,000 a sport. And they each played 10 games. Every coach, college coach will tell you they do not look at high school sports. They find you in their clinics and in travel team in the baseball. And I'm here to tell you there's 50 teams of baseballs, there's 100 teams of basketball, and there's 100 teams of soccer that there's outside the school. Like I said, my kid played 115 games of baseball, and not one was with the middle school. Not one. My other kid plays 75 games of basketball. Not one was with the school. And both of them cost less than what you're raising my taxes on. It's not a necessity. They're not being taught, and it's just an extracurricular activity. That's what Dr. Otto told me in his office when I said, hey, this is a problem. Well, it's after school. It's an extracurricular activity. So then why is, I guess, the football program $100,000 and whatever baseball, I don't know, but we don't need it. We don't need it. Why are we cutting band? We need music. We need the aids. We don't need middle school sports.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tammy Matthews, Senator Douglasville. My comment is not just to the board, but it's also to the public. I think the public needs to be aware that cuts did have to be made, and it was made in all departments. My concern is that no one's really speaking up for the education. I'm hearing music and sports all the time. Special ed was hit very hard, and I will speak on that. There's a lot of people that may not have a job. Your children are going to be in jeopardy. Your children that are eligible now for sports may not be eligible for sports if they don't keep the education where it needs to be. So I think that needs to be taken into thought as well. And, my apologies if I offended anyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leilani Pufnock, Cocalica Road, Birdsboro. I just have a question. The $1 gate receipt increase, does that go into a general fund? The balancing the school budget? Is that where all the gate receipts go this time? They do. Okay. And also, I am glad that the school board has continued to bring this deficit down to, are we down to maybe 0 by now?
Maybe.
I think that's great. I don't say that sarcastically. I do think it's great. But I bet if we continue to look, we can find that $10,000 that we need to save the indoor program. I'm sure there is a stone that has been left unturned. And also, with regards to Tamara's comment about you didn't single out the music program. No, you did not single out the music program. However, we did not start with a $720,000 budget either. We will reach zero a lot faster than your athletic department is going to reach zero. Because, Mr. Basil, as you said, the next year and the next year and the next year, this is not getting any better. So if you come back to us again next year and you say we need a $25,000 cut again, and the athletic department needs a $25,000 or 25% cut, we will hit zero before they will. What are you going to do then? You want to make it fair? We'll take that $540,000 budget. Give us the same. But I doubt that's going to happen.
Mike Wolf, 804 West State Street in Birdsboro. Since we're talking about the budget, I hope the board would allow the directors to have a little bit more control of their budget and include the whole budget, including transportation. And let me tell you why it's important. This past year, the band fathers volunteered all their time to drive all the district equipment back and forth, including their trucks. We used some of our personal vehicles. No district employee was involved, although, I talked to Justin at one time. I said, well, at least we were able to get all the volunteers. We saved some money for the music department. He says, well, I really bet the transportation budget isn't part of the music budget. And I would like you to at least allow the directors to have total control of the budget. So they're like for sports or for us and band, the fathers and parents volunteer their own time. They use their own vehicles. It's taking load off the district and saving the district money. It didn't save any money for the program. As a taxpayer, it was still the right decision. And I wish that that the total budget would be in their control. Thank you.
Tara Krathamel, 907 Geigertown Road in Birdsboro. I have a simple question about a letter that recently made its way around Union Township. A letter surprisingly with the last name of one of your board members up there, so I'm sure you're familiar with the letter that I'm speaking of. I have two questions about that letter. Number one, unfortunately there were a lot of bashes against the teachers in the Danny Boone School District. And while the majority of them are hardworking individuals, I would imagine that some of them are probably at their wits' end and ready to go. There's no doubt about that. What I want to say about that is this. Were we able to validate the fact, or are we able to validate all of the facts that they had in there about whether or not the tax increases are going in that big of a lump sum to the teachers' salaries increases? And B, why in the world are you going to put so much emphasis on the children at Birdsboro Elementary who are not making AYP and taking away from some of the kids who bust their butts all year long to get the good grades and work hard and do what they have to do and be successful, and you're taking away from them? Have we done anything about this letter? Have we looked into it? Have we validated anything? And I feel sorry for everybody that whoever wrote this letter is bashing. What are you doing about that letter?
I'm not doing anything about the letter. I didn't write the letter. The letter, I think, speaks for itself. And we received lots of letters at the district level. I got a stack of letters in my office about this high from different organizations regarding just about everything we've discussed in this budget, whether it's music, whether it's sports, whether it's the usefulness of aids in a classroom, special needs, transportation, kindergarten. you name it. Everything that we've discussed over the last 4 months, I've got a letter from a particular individual or a constituent group in my office arguing the benefits or the needs for removing certain programs. I treat that letter like any other letter. It's sent out by constituents of this district with a particular point of view. I don't think it's the district's responsibility to go out there and argue on a point-by-point basis every piece of correspondence that we receive from the public.
Okay, I'm not talking about a point-by-point correspondence. I'm talking about the fact that right now we're sitting here discussing the budget. We're discussing tax increases that are being talked about, put on all of us. And I'm talking about the fact that that letter specifically said that a bulk of the tax increases go to teachers' salaries and increases in their salaries. I want to know, has that been validated? Are you going to, you validated everything? The $10,000, food thing for the football team. Okay, you said, here's the deal on that. This is what the truth is. I want to know, are you going to validate what that letter said also? Are you going to say, what's the truth? Is the truth that 65, 75, 85% of that is going to go to teachers or not?
Well, what I can tell you is, if you look at our budget, the salaries and benefits portions of our budget is about 69% of our budget, thereabouts. And the current contract that we had in place, that part of our budget was moving at 6 to 7% a year. That's a combination of things. It's a combination of salary step movements. It's a combination of education reimbursements. It's a combination of PSERS contributions, the state mandates of the school district. It's a variety of different things. But that portion of the budget is moving 6 or 7% per year. Okay? If you look at our...
That's all salaries. Isn't that correct? Not just
all salaries. Yeah. So
all salaries.
you have a good portion of our budget that's moving at a clip of 6 to 7% a year. Any tax increase that we are trying to implement would not cover that portion of our budget alone. The index doesn't cover that portion of our budget. So even if we raise taxes by the maximum amount, which you see was about $540,000, it didn't cover that portion of our budget moving at a clip of almost $1.5 million a year. I don't know what else to say about it. Now, I'm happy to try to address the other part of your question, which was something to do with the Birdsboro Elementary School. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, the letter pretty much made it sound like, the majority of the kids that are coming out of there are stupid. I mean, that's not the truth. It makes it sound like they're not learning anything. It makes it sound like they're not going to be successful. It bashes the elementary center. It's ridiculous and it's shameful. I mean, those kids, and it takes away from the kids who really do. There are kids who need help. There's no doubt about that. But there are kids who work hard too, and I think that takes away from the successes of the kids that do. And I think that's ridiculous. That's shameful.
I think you need to take that up with the author of the letter. I mean, we can't speak for what everyone says. Instead of a letter, that person could have come here and said that out loud.
And I understand that. I understand that part. I understand that part completely. The bulk of what I wanted to know was I wanted you to validate the tax increase and that associated with the teachers' increases. That's pretty much what I wanted to know.
When that letter came out, I think it was kind of amazing that the letter came out and it was not Mr. Basil, not Andrew Basil, but the Basil, using their business address.
Right.
It was mailed out of a bulk mailer who had a permit out of Lancaster. They were brought in and dumped in the Douglasville post office and then sent out on a pretty amazing, at a time when Andrew was out of the country. I mean, it just seemed there's an awful lot of coincidences with a letter that had an awful lot of false data. I mean, we last board meeting came straight out that this was not a letter that we endorsed, we knew about, nor do we support, nor are we going to make any other comments on because it was full of just wrong data, bad data.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If it is full of inaccurate data,
And we made that statement at the last meeting, at the last budget meeting. We made that statement that we were not supporting it, that we don't own it, it's not ours, and we don't believe or endorse the data that was in that. And enough was said, and we moved on.
We received tons of mail from all different constituents with facts that they cite. I think it's up to the individual taxpayers and members of the board to take a look at those letters and validate for themselves whether they think that those arguments have merit or not. That's not for this board to sit here and take a position and argue to the public. Otherwise, we'd be spending all of our time. We get, I mean, hundreds of emails and letters every month.
Okay.
So we can't do that.
Just.
And I'm sorry, but we're way past the 3 minutes here.
Of course.
I wrote the letter, and it backed up all the stuff that was in the letter. Look at the footnotes. All the information was correct when I wrote the letter.
You just got to give your name and your address.
Don Bays, 196 Black Mat Road. The reason we're in this position is because of the board members up here made bad decisions over the last 15 years.
Okay, any other public comment? All right. Personnel.
Moving to personnel. We will have retirements and resignations as listed. The item A is the resignation that we were able to replace that with a .5 position only. Again, we have our resignation of Tom McGath. I can say, even I've developed a pretty close working relationship, and I will certainly miss him. But we're looking forward to move forward with the way we have to go beyond that. The last item on C there, that was the one that we thought we could use for the transfer of the learning coach, if that's the way the board ultimately decides to go. The rest of the information under personnel, I would just stipulate to unless there are any questions. We do have the election of the school board treasurer on here, and also the appointment of the Berks County Intermediate Unit Rep. I assume we don't do those tonight. That's for the 23rd, just to let everybody know that that will be happening. So that concludes personnel, unless there are any questions.
Any questions by board members? Seeing none, any questions or comments from the public on section 9? Okay, seeing none, moving on to 10, programs.
You have your monthly enrollment report, nothing out of the ordinary to report there. Your mid-strategic plan review is with you. I'm going to ask Mrs. Trainer to give a brief summary of how that process is unfurled. Mrs. Trainer?
As a follow-up to the March board meeting where the members of the board asked me to go back to the members of the strategic plan committee and suggest an intro paragraph that would address the financial impact of a number of issues that the board has faced this year and projected over the next couple of years. And in fact, from the current document you have, you can see the overview was not part of the original document on page 1. And I received, out of 21 members, 18 individuals agreed that they had no problem to look at adding the overview, and 3 did not. So the overview would be part of what I present to you that I would ask you to accept, and then I will send on the acceptance to the Department of Ed.
Thank you.
Any questions?
And also you have the summer school program, the attachment listed for that as well, just to inform you of what we will be offering.
And that program is at no cost to the district, as it's always been in the past. In addition to the enrichment and remedial programs that you see listed there, there will be 2 additional programs offered this year for students. One is through Westchester University. It will be hosted on Amity Intermediate's campus for students who have finished 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and it's called Young Writers, Young Readers, and that will be offered in July. And then we will also, again this year, host the science camp, the Camp Invention, which will be over at the middle school. And both programs will be sponsored and coordinated by our own staff, but it will be run by universities and outside organizations. Again, at no cost to the district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes my report on programs.
Any other comments from board members on that? Any comments from the public on number 10 on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, moving on to 11, policies.
You have the second reading of the administrative guideline use of facilities. That's to implement our turnstile plan down at the stadium. The first reading acknowledgement of policy 624 on the fund balance. Mr. Basil, do you want to comment out of committee on that?
Yeah, we just discussed this in the Finance Committee prior to the meeting, and under guidelines, there was some recommendations made by our accounting office to add a paragraph that essentially would provide more flexibility as to how money would be spent out of fund balances. Without this paragraph, there would be no flexibility and would be required to spend the money in a, as per the default clause in GASBA. And so the recommendation from the Finance Committee is to accept the recommendations from the auditors and adding that back to, adding that paragraph to the policy. Ms. Penta, did you send that out to the entire board, this revised copy? Okay, so just with the Finance Committee. There was also an extra line written in there under committed funds in terms of a description that the board would have the ability to commit funds through a board resolution. And finally, they made a recommendation to increase the base minimum that the fund balance could go to. The Finance Committee had recommended at the last meeting 1%. The auditors suggested between 4 and 5%. Could be 2 to 3 times what payroll is. As a committee, we had disagreed with that. We thought 1% is a minimum level. That's about $500,000 now. And that way there's more flexibility for this board and future boards to decide how much money out of fund balance they truly want to spend when the time comes. We didn't want the policy to be used as some kind of something to be argued over in terms of how much fund balance is going to be spent or not spent given the financial conditions the district may face at any given time. I will, in turn, Ms. Penza, if you could edit this and get this right out, back out to the board. Just too short a turnaround time to get this to you guys, but we'll get it out to you tomorrow so you can take a look at what the revised final version will be.
And that was all for committee members?
Yes.
Okay.
I know school code says no more than 8%, right?
Right.
That's correct.
I know past auditors have always recommended between 3 to 5 is the safe place to be within your fund balance. And years ago, prior to my time on the board, they didn't really have much of a fund balance. And maybe there's some historians out there, I don't know, but the roof literally blew off the high school and they didn't have money to cover it. And that's why we started putting money in the capital reserve, budgeting for that. But beyond payroll, I think you need to have some emergency money there. I won't support anything that goes below 3%. I just don't think it's prudent for the safety of the district in the long term.
Just one point of clarification. It's the proper term. Unassigned fund balance, not all of the fund balance. So there could be additional fund balance dollars in there that are set for specific expenses.
But it's the unknown expenses that you have to worry about.
Pardon?
It's the unknown, unanticipated budget expenses that you have to worry about. I mean, it's pretty much out there. 3 to 5% of your budget should be in fund balance. And you're saying you could go down to 1%. That means this year we could go down to, instead of using, what are we using, 750? We would go down to using 2.6 million. And then next year start the hole off in that.
No.
You know how much of that money is going to pay your debt service. You know how much of that money is going to pay those other things.
There's several categories of fund balance, okay, and there was 4, and basically it's the unassigned. I mean, they're talking about different portions. It's just not fund balance any longer.
Well, then maybe when we're having budget discussions, we should be knowing how that fund balance is distributed. So I actually know what you're talking about because it's always been fund balance is 3.1. Is that what the unassigned fund balance
Yes,
is?
ours is all unassigned right now. What would
of
be
which 2.1 we know is about payroll.
What would be assigned would be the 766 that you're forecasting for next year. The remainder of that would be unassigned.
So the 3.1 is unassigned this year, right?
If we end at 3.1, it's going to be 766 is going to be assigned, and the difference between
I know,
3.1 and that would be unassigned.
Right. But let's,
We have nothing-
3.1 is where our ending fund balance is projected.
Correct.
We know that it takes, I think last year we did the homework, and it was about 2.1 to cover payroll, which is, of the fund balance, that's 4% of our budget. And you're saying the unassigned could go down to 1%.
Well, the idea here is that, quite frankly, you may have to spend your fund balance.
Yeah, I think, Andrew, Mr. Ramsey, you need to make it clear. We could go down to 1% before, which means that we will go down to 1% when we start using that fund balance between July and August, and then we replenish it again.
No, but you could actually use down to, you could.
We could also go and use it to close the gap in the budget.
Right.
But if we say 3 to 4%, we can only go down to 3 to 4%, then we can't use that unassigned money, if I'm not mistaken, in the July and August timeframe.
Correct.
Okay, so if we say 4%, then at 4%, we have to stop using.
Or you got to start implementing cost-cutting measures.
Right. And in July and August, we would not be able to use $2.1 million to make it through until we get paid because we're put at a stop.
We wanted to
I'm
just...
not sure if that's necessarily true. I think you need to show a plan of replenishing.
Right. The idea here is that, I mean, this isn't something that, this
But that
is
plan
enforced
wouldn't be
on us
approved by board.
by
because we're not
GAD.
in meeting.
We wanted to provide this board and future boards enough flexibility to do what they deem is appropriate for managing the finances of the district from one year to the next. And what I personally didn't want to see is arbitrary numbers being sort of put in there that then become an issue of board argument as to what you're going to start arguing about what the number should be versus what's in the best interest of the district at any given time. And that's where I was coming from on it. But
Have you polled other districts as to what do they have policies? What are districts across Pennsylvania? As I'm going to say, and we have had 2 different auditing companies in the past 16 years, and it was pretty much 3 to 5% is you want to stay within that range. You don't want to go below that.
This is a new policy that all the districts must adopt by June 30th, so everyone's in the process of doing this right now. The one other one that was emailed to me from a committee that I'm on is Pottsgrove, and I believe his was at 4%. Again,
And
our
auditors
auditors
are recommending
4 to 5.
I think, Mrs. Fassett, I think I voiced the same concern at the committee meeting because, I do believe we have those unknowns. And I guess I looked at their opinion, and I don't think that any one of them were looking to go down to 1%. I think they were looking to have the flexibility there for the board, and hopefully the board at the time would be prudent. But I did agree with that sentiment of what if the unknown happens. But I'm also in agreement with it should be a minimum. I did concur with them to move this forward, but I think it should definitely be a minimum, not that that's the optimum. I think really we should be shooting more for the 3 to 4%. I don't know that we should tie hands either, so that's why I concurred with them.
What happens to the schools that are in rough shape that have 0 now, and they have to adopt this program? What do they have to work with?
they could set theirs at 0% if they wanted to.
So we can, okay.
Twin Valley has a 0 fund balance.
So really there's no impact if they do adopt this policy. There is no penalty on them.
Quite frankly, we're required to review this policy on an annual basis. So you can change these numbers any way you want from one year to the next. This is, in my opinion, this is more of an accounting, mandate that just really makes it much more complicated for school boards to make decisions that are in their best interest. That's my opinion. Any other comments from board members? Okay, so we'll make the revisions to this and we'll get it back out to the board for you to digest and talk about it some more. Go ahead.
Ready to roll?
Yeah, number C.
Okay, item C is the first reading of Policy 114, Extracurricular, Co-curricular Activities in Athletics. This policy at one point had been brought forward and was asked to be tabled and brought back. We are at that point now, based on the work of the Curriculum Committee, the Activity Fee Committee, The major portion of that is to move marching band performances to the extracurricular side of that policy and remove it from co-curricular. Are there any questions on the policy? I'm going to go into more detail on the guideline.
The only question I had was under paragraph 3 in the italic.
Yes.
Lines, I think 6 and 7 there, where it says, any extracurricular activity shall be considered to be under the sponsorship of this board when it has been approved by the superintendent and or his or her designee. Shouldn't that read when it's approved by the board and superintendent, as opposed to just superintendent?
Let me research that. It would make sense to me now that I look at that a little bit more
I think
closely.
that came up during the activity fee committee discussions where, our meet and greet would sit down and we'd be talking about, all of a sudden we got to pay for an additional.
It does seem backwards. I would agree with you.
And nobody on the board had approved an additional sport or whatever it was. It just sort of happened internally at a building level, and then we had to go around and pay for something that the board never really approved. So.
You might want to change the language when it has been approved by the district.
Yeah, I mean.
I'll look at it. I'll talk to Mr. Subers about it and get an answer for you. Are there any other questions on that wording? Okay, let me move on to the guideline. Board members, given that we had already had something in place, you see a number of edits that are within the body of this guideline. One I would actually just draw your attention to immediately is we talked tonight about, we added physical fees to this. Are we saying that we want to change that number on there from 15 to 25? Correct. Okay, so we need to make that edit immediately. There are, obviously, the line throughs are things that would be eliminated from that. We've made some edits based on where we are now. If you take a look at this, the last time this was visited was December of 1991, so this is obviously needed some cleanup.
Quick question on
Go ahead.
academic eligibility.
That is the current eligibility policy.
With the strike-throughs in it?
Yes. Those are just process things that Mr. Legaff did a little bit differently. And I don't have it here. Go ahead.
Although this is also going to be looked at under the curriculum committee.
Yeah.
I think it's on the agenda for the next meeting, but in order for us to move forward with the activity fee, I think we need to move forward with this, even if it means we're going to be revising
Right.
it.
You can do it.
Just
3 months.
I was curious about when did you report those numbers? You know what I mean? Like, if you're not doing it, there is no time frame in here for when you would do that.
I would have to defer to Mr. Legaff to get an answer on that. Again, this is one of those things that he took care of.
I wasn't sure if it was under, I didn't pull up 115.
Right. I can get that answer for you. I made a note of that. Under intramurals, we are no longer involved in an intramural program. That's why that's been eliminated. I would like to take some time to go over the activity fees, and maybe for the benefit of the public that's here, this is the recommendation. I think memorializes the recommendation from the activity fee committee. Obviously, if there are any changes or omissions or things that aren't here or wording issues that people have, now would be the time to let us know. Just for the benefit of those of you that braved out this meeting, let me read to you what our fee structure will be. This would include all athletics in our high school marching band, all students who participate in one of the district-funded athletic teams and or the marching band, which per guideline 114, which is this guideline, they will be assessed an activity fee of $150 for participation in one sport and or the marching band. Any student then who would participate in 2 sports and or marching band is included in that, that's why the awkward language is there, will be assessed an activity fee of $150 for the first sport, and then the $75 will be for the second activity. There will be no activity fee assessed for participation in a third sport, and for families who have multiple students who participate obviously in multiple activities. The committee's recommendation was to cap that fee at $500.
I would just, before you move on to the next paragraph, I would just recommend that last sentence there should read something to the effect of, for families who have multiple students who participate in multiple activities, the total activity fee per family for athletics and or marching band will be $500, just so that's spelled
Well, we
out.
can clean that up, sure. If you want to just email that to me, does anyone else on the board have an objection to that? If you just want to email that to me, I'll take care of that.
Dr. Otto, that's regardless of middle school, high school, right? I mean, that's combined.
Right. Number 2, extracurricular clubs. All students who participate in one or more of the district-approved/funded clubs per item 2 of Guideline 114 where they're listed will be assessed an annual fee of $50. This fee will cover participation in an unlimited number of clubs/activities. Going further, question?
Just to clarify, since we had a question on it, that's what jazz band.
Jazz band falls under that category. 3, any student who participates in a sport, club, activity, or student organization not funded by the district will not be assessed an activity fee. We do have some instances where that happens. Number 4, the following district-approved clubs, organizations will be exempted from the charge. And again, these are recommendations coming out of the committee. Middle school newspaper, middle school student council, high school student government, high school class officers, and high school National Honor Society. 5th item, students who participate in any sport, club, activity, or student organization that is self-funded through ticket sales or other revenue sources is also exempted from an activity fee. For those of you that have been aware of it, we've had one local community club come forward and say they would be willing to pick up the tab for that club. This is meant for other organizations that may be interested in doing that as well.
One question about that. I guess I just have an issue with through ticket sales, because right now ticket sales for all events kind of go into the general fund to help support everything.
I think that was the self-funding, and I had a similar question. Should we state what those are? That was the yearbook, the middle school musical, middle school stage crew.
I think that needs to be spelled out.
I
because
think we
You want me
need
to fix up number 5?
I think you need to say that are self-funded. I think you need to put in parentheses, because we have it in our budget, what's being
I
self-funded.
think you have to define self-funded.
So how about if we put 5 and then item letter A and then put a list of organizations that fit under there?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
I just think it needs to be clear, because
I think it needs to be
you
clear,
read
too.
this and you think, oh, well, basketball ticket sales are now going to exempt that.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. I can see where that would be misconstrued. And finally, this is just a procedural thing. The annual implementation and collection of the activity fee will be organized and managed. Actually, if we're looking to go from athletic director to this facilitator, it would be in that office. So we might want to change that word pending approval of that. So that is Administrative Guideline 114 summarized.
I would think I would just add a couple more things. One, that the payment of the fee does not guarantee playtime. And it's not a pay per play, it's an activity fee. I think the second part of that is it is refundable if you don't make a team.
Well, would you not want to make it payable upon making the team
Well,
versus
however
playing
you
the
want to make
refunding
it,
part?
yeah, I mean,
Because
but
it'd be
it's
like,
non-refundable if you make the team and get kicked off for some, stupid reason you weren't.
oh, yeah, for
doing-
grades. I mean, if you don't make grades and you get suspended from the team, you don't get a refund.
Exactly. So I think that part of it needs to be clarified up, and also.
So refunding, okay.
Well, the fact that A, doesn't guarantee
Correct.
playtime, and then B, that it's non-refundable, and then C, that we have a free and reduced lunch guideline that we're using to help.
Yeah, I apologize. I oversaw that wasn't meant to slight anybody. I knew we did talk about that.
And also, we discussed under the extracurricular, Mr. McAdams will be going back, if we can review it for indoor bar and percussion. Budget in general, we'd be able to slate that back under this.
You're suggesting that we charge a fee for these two things?
Well, if they would be charged a fee, plus there would be some funds.
Well, they were an extracurricular club.
Yeah, we'd find some funds, we could bring
Would
that
they,
back.
because of the transportation and everything, would they be considered like a second sport at the $75 rate?
$150.
No, it's $150 for the first.
Right.
Correct.
And $75 for the second. And the assumption is
It was a
that
second-
they're all in
it's a second
marching
activity.
band, so they'd be the second.
Yeah.
They'd be at
Right.
the second level.
Or it could be third, depending upon how many you're taking.
Correct. Subject to the cap then.
So I'd like to leave that open for that group.
Well, we're going to have, based on tonight's conversation,
Correct.
the ability to see what we can do
See if we can do it
creatively.
Minor details, the numbering, we're off numbering, since we eliminated
Yes, you are correct.
the intramurals. If
We
you
can
could
fix that
clean
up,
that up,
sure.
and also 2, I think we're missing a letter. We're not Cubs, we're
I
Clubs.
think she fixed, yeah, I think we fixed that. We already
And
fixed that.
my question is general, now that we know where we're going in the future, with items on page 2, the academic eligibility, C, transportation, D, equipment, E, student responsibilities. Shouldn't they be universal to all extracurriculars and not just athletics?
Well, don't we currently, like lacrosse and stuff, we don't provide?
No, what I'm saying is, like,
Well,
student responsibilities.
No, I think
Any
Mrs.
member
was
that's,
saying
any
you could
student
marching
who's
band.
in marching band or a club and going out and representing Daniel
Oh,
Boone.
yeah, I agree with you.
But they're only under athletics, equipment, that they have to keep their equipment in good order that they provide.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Eligibility, transportation, you know.
What I just saw, that transportation will be provided to all athletic events.
Yeah, no, but like we provide transportation to all music-sponsored events. I mean, we should be providing the transportation if they're going to a competition. You know, I mean, of course, modify it to the specific activity. But
I think it's a good
I think it
suggestion.
should be there. And academic eligibility, they should be eligible.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Which means there's going to be some tweaking of how it gets reported, because right now, the specifics of how it happens is in 115. You know, that it comes out every week.
Are you suggesting that students have to become athletically eligible for the items under item 2, like academic challenge, science club, stage crew? Is that okay? That's a whole other conversation.
I think you should need to be, and I know curriculum's going to be picking it up, what is eligibility, but I do think we need to tighten that up a little and make students more accountable for their grades. And that means if you're not performing in the classroom, you shouldn't be outside the classroom doing things.
I don't have an issue with that.
I think it needs to be universal to anything after school hours.
Yeah, if you're failing your courses, how can you justify having the time to go do these extra things?
And it shouldn't be an issue with the other things. So we've been told, but I think it needs to be there.
Any other comments from board members on that? Everybody's in agreement? Okay.
That's it.
Okay, any other comment from board members on these policies? We just warn everybody out at this point, Margaret, so whatever you want to suggest.
Let them know.
Public comment on policies?
Tom Schatz, 729 East 2nd Street, Birdsboro. What was your anticipated revenue from having this item D in on?
I think I projected about $160,000, but I wouldn't quote that, because our business office and the building administrators who provided the rosters, our athletic director, they all need to review the work that I've done.
Okay.
And come back with it more so.
Yeah, but for evening the budget off, we knocked that down by 20.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Right. So we guesstimated 140.
Okay. I have a suggestion and a question and a question. My first suggestion is to lower the 150, since it's year one, to 100 for the first, and the second $50. My first question is, what is the procedure for not having to pay regarding hardship? And is that listed in the policy you just read?
That's what we just...
No, we just suggested that needed to be, the policy needed to be amended to include that. That was just...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. And the last question is, let's assume you make the team and you pay the 150, if you keep it at 150. And the first practice you break your foot and you're not able to participate in any future practices or games. What happens?
As the policy stands, it's non-refundable.
Thank you.
If if you try out for the team, and you don't make the team, you don't pay a fee.
Well, no, it's not paid to begin with, so it's not refundable.
Okay, any other public comment on policies?
Lynn Lamont, Rosewood Court, Douglasville. I'm back to my original, I guess,
Yes.
and I don't believe it was totally answered with your structure as far as extracurriculars versus clubs versus activities. Is there a list somewhere, or can that be provided in the very near future as far as what constitutes a club? Is it, what are the parameters?
Once this policy is complete and we do the edits, it'll actually be right in there, and you could go onto the website under our policies and guidelines and find it.
Okay, so I'm just confused tonight then how you're calling some things clubs versus others activities. Is there a list, a tentative list
Yes.
that we're working from?
There's a
Is
copy
that-
out in the foyer that has it, and like
It's out here?
under 1 where it says athletics, it says all the sports that are offered. Under 2, clubs and special programs, it goes through high school and middle school.
Okay,
All the
and it lists
clubs.
like National
They're
Honor
all
Society.
listed.
Yes, correct.
What have you, it's out here?
Then under 3 music organizations, it has all of them there.
Everything that's an activity.
If you wanted general categories, you would probably say athletics, clubs and organizations, and then music organizations. Probably the 3 broad
The way
categories.
the fee structure is being implemented right now, athletics, it's $150 for the first sport, $75 for the second, 0 for the third or fourth, whatever.
Right.
Marching band has been included as part of that athletic fee.
Right, I
Okay?
understood that.
I believe clubs now would be like jazz club and Spanish club and all these. Those are clubs. It's a $50 one-time fee. You participate in as many clubs as you possibly want. And then we have certain clubs that we excluded, certain things that students participate that we excluded from that list. So if you were in student government and that's the only thing you did, there was no fee for that.
National Honor Society.
National Honor Society, the newspaper.
Service type.
Certain,
Service type.
yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Sherry Mondoff, 117 Warman Road. In connection with the jazz band, which is being referred to as a club, is this the same program as we had previously? Does club indicate that there's no travel associated with that program, or
Not necessarily.
it's the same? It's the same program.
It's going to be sustained as
Whatever
prior year.
whatever the budget dictates, I would imagine. If we make a budgetary decision that says there's no travel associated, well then that's a budgetary decision. But whatever jazz was last year, this policy doesn't differentiate what jazz is for next year.
So that program stays intact.
As long as it was budgeted as it was last year, yes.
And select choir is included in that?
That's
as well?
correct.
Okay. And that was a curricular decision.
Right, originally it was part of the 25% reduction in the music program. But
We brought that
let's just
back
say the
with-
board was not happy with that decision.
So the board made a decision to bring back that program.
Select choir and jazz.
Because the cost is really insignificant for jazz and select choir. The stipends involved. A lot of the driving force behind the whole activity fee was to try to subsidize the stipends. And that stipend was part of a stipend already being paid.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on policies? Okay, seeing none.
That's my report.
Transportation,
No report.
old business,
No business.
no business, okay. New business.
Mr. Sheen.
I believe this is the memo of understanding for the agreement with the teachers. Working with Mr. Subers, I should have something in everybody's hands by mid this week, if not by the end of the week. I just want to make mention of the fact again one more time that the teachers in their agreement were able to provide us with a little over $1 million of salary concessions, thank you, and a number of other things. So, and they'll be outlined in that memo of understanding that will go back for the board to approve and not for teachers. So,
Okay. Any questions from board members on the memo of understanding? I guess we'll see that shortly. Okay, do I have any motion to adjourn?
I have just one quick item. I know it's late, and I know everybody's tired, but I just wanted to bring up one item under new business, and that is, for the past several board meetings, budget workshops, we've been trying our hand at recording these sessions, and we've been putting that out on the school board login area of our website. I just wanted to get some thought from the board members, and we can continue this on in a future date, about getting that made available to the public and put out there. So far, everything's been going pretty flawlessly with the voice recordings. They're very clear. Everyone can hear them. I think it's a great opportunity to get it out there so other...
Mr. Senator, I think Mr. Super said that we need to make these available. If they are, if we record these...
We need to make them available if someone asks for them.
I think we should make them available to the public. I do too. I agree.
I mean, you already have now. You might as well do it.
Yeah, I think we just need to list them as the unofficial, and then you have the official minutes of the written.
Right.
You said you couldn't have two sets of minutes.
Do we need a policy?
Yes, that's where I was going to go.
I think we need Mr. Zuber's help in defining the use of these. I think it's more so that citizens and those board members who have missed a meeting can at least understand what went on.
Yeah.
But once the minutes are approved, those are the official minutes.
Exactly.
And any recording is just background information. But I do think we need a policy.
And we also need a procedure as well. It can't be me showing up with this recorder and dropping it on. You know, we need to have.
I mean, if you've
Lori or someone
donated
have
this,
that
if you've donated this recorder, which you have to the district, then possibly our district secretary can put it out there every day. Because you're not here all the time.
No,
Things
district
happen.
secretary. That's board secretary.
Not our board secretary, our Mrs. Barr.
Can we get a policy going?
But while we're talking policy, you used Skype very successly the other night. I think we need to do that in June. I think we need to have a
It's all part
policy
of an
coming
electronic
forward
policy,
with teleconferencing and
Right.
Skype. Like combine them all together, but I think it needs to happen too.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Approved. Meeting's adjourned. Okay, board, quick. I just need you for 5 minutes. I promise it's 5 or less.
Dude, I'm going to